So we're getting closer to the starting time. So the agenda for today is going to be from 8:30 to 9 a.m. We're going to have the welcome and just chatting for a little bit, trying to get to know again the group. We are at 45 participants. I know not all of you actually signed up for this session, and that's okay. But we will love for you to right now do me a huge favor. And if you can, on the chat, put your name and your either school, charter, business, anything in there. We use this to prove that we're meeting, provide this list to the group to, network and make sure that we can definitely get a hold of you if you have any questions and we have the answers. So if you don't mind, just go ahead and put your first name, last name, and the school district or business will be greatly appreciated.
If you change your participant name too, it's helpful when people are talking to remember where you're from.
Correct. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Going back to the agenda, this is definitely just an open discussion. We're going to be talking about independent studies, COVID-19 related issues, vaccination management. We also reach out to Stephanie and PowerSchool. Vivian and Eric are going to present. Actually, I'm sorry. We reach out to Vivian. Vivian reached out to us, and we were able to get Stephanie and Eric to present on PowerSchool. We added Eric almost at the last minute, just because a lot of us are using either an SIS, especially Schoology, and we can utilize the Schoology with independent studies. So they're going to be doing some presentations, and they're going to walk us through the step of what we can do. And towards the end, we're going to be talking about the customizations that we have implemented for COVID or independent study or anything related to PowerSchool. Also, there was one district that they wanted information about Power Teacher Pro and how we deploy that in our schools. Personally, for many years we were on Unified Classroom, but this year because of cost, we have to cut our Unified Classroom, and we are now in PTP. So I will probably benefit from that as well. And of course, if you have any questions, let us know. Don't go away from this meeting without either emailing me your question, and I can definitely reach out to PowerSchool. And I guess it would be a good idea if I can put my email in here.
It's a bad day when you can't even spell your own name.
I know, I'm telling you. For the past 2 days, I only had about 2 hours of sleep.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, there's some personal issues, work-related issues, and environmental issues. I'm trying to check to see if Vivian, Eric, I know for sure that Stephanie will be coming in around 10 a.m. Vivian, are you on the line by any chance? Are you on the chat?
I am actually. Hi, Eric. Yes, so Eric is going to actually be joining after Stephanie joined. So he's going to walk us through the independent study portion of afterwards, after Stephanie gets hers.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We still have a few more minutes. Anybody has anything to share, anything funny, anything that we need to be aware of? I know that I get an email.
Some of you might know this guy.
Oh yeah, hey, how you doing?
Hello, there's some Southern Cal friends.
Yeah.
Hey there, stranger.
Hey. Roger's hanging out in Illinois with me for a couple days.
Yeah.
He always gets to trouble.
Yeah.
He's got me chopping wood at his house.
Yeah, right. I got a bunch of logs stacked up, and Roger said he needed a workout, so I left some logs for him to split for me.
Well, if you ever need help, let me know. I need to work out too. This
yeah. His 4-year-old boy and I are already like best buds. He's already told me he loves me.
Oh,
Aw.
He comes on a little strong.
And how's
Kinda
the
like his
baby
dad.
doing?
He's good. He just turned 5 months. Cutting his first tooth. And no. Cutting his first tooth, and he's as sweet as can be. He adores his big brother and is adored by his big brother, so it works out nicely.
That's
That's really good.
awesome.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Hey, Eric was talking about how there's probably growing interest in Schoology. So I don't know if you just want to give a quick intro. We're not starting officially until about another 15 minutes. We're just kind of chit-chatting right now, but you can talk about the recent work you've done in Schoology. Adam's really digging it, I think.
Yeah, I will shut this door then.
Is that okay?
yeah. Just wanted
Yeah.
to say something else because I know I'm going to forget if I don't. And one of the things that I got is an email from, actually got multiple emails, and we all know this, it happens all the time, but we are asking all the districts to get to your CalPATS representative, worker coordinator, and make sure that they work on those, exiting those students as soon as possible, especially those who have a TBD because they're not able to test, and the testing for LPAC once again has gone to the original time. So they asked me if I can make an announcement to please work and exit the students that are no longer with you. So if you can make a note and work on that, greatly appreciated by all the districts. Go ahead, Adam.
Right. So, like API stuff or integration stuff or what?
I don't know.
Anything?
Just in general, Schoology, how it's going, what you've done to integrate it better.
Sure. So Schoology is actually pretty great, and I hate most things. So that means something. We really like it. One of the things that's really interesting is how well it implements the LTI spec. So LTI is learning tool integration, interoperability. So it's a protocol. It's like a system of practices for passing information to another system and then back in. And for an LMS, what that means is it easily creates, depending on the vendor and who the thing is, easily creates a way for the teacher to say, I want to assign these kids work. And then the teacher goes in and picks that work and says, assign it. And then it feeds a link back over into Schoology, and then that link is ready to go. So when you think about like the difference between, you find an interesting news article on the internet, and you can either say, go to the CNN homepage, or you can say, here is the link to the actual article of the thing that's going on right now I want you to read about. Those are two fundamentally different things when you're sharing. And a good LTI integration means you're sending these kids the deep link. You're sending them the one that takes them directly to the work. And also, what it often means is that because the kids are authenticated in Schoology, when they click that link, not only does it penetrate into the website and give them the work they're supposed to be doing, but it automatically logs the kid in as the user because it is able to exchange credentials through, good API work. What's great is for us, most of the time, it's really just like, how do I integrate this system with Schoology? Oh, here's an article. I install this plugin to Schoology. I grab some API keys and I paste them over here. As soon as it's saved, the next time the kids go to do the work, they're automatically logged in, which is fantastic. So a lot of my work has been for the last 2 months has been going to teachers and saying, hey, what tools do you want to be able to use? And they're like, well, here's the 5 websites that we use. And we were giving kids links to stuff in Google Classroom. Now I'm like, well, I can make this better because the kids will automatically be logged in and the work will be, linked up like it's supposed to be. Sometimes that embeds in an iframe inside Schoology, which is actually really cool too. So they never feel like they've left the system. And other times it's just a good, deep link.
How's the integration back to PowerSchool?
It leaves a little bit to be desired, Roger. It's okay. It feeds the data to Schoology pretty well. The part that writes back to PowerSchool is mostly just grades. And that seems to be working pretty well. There's some goofiness with assignment flags and is something missing? Is it a 0? That kind of stuff. I'm still trying to collect fully what the teachers are telling me are the issues. It sounds like if they mark something as a 0 or a missing, and then they mark it as having been received, it doesn't unmark it as missing, and they hate that because now they feel like they're doing it in 2 places. Some of the enhancements that I have been doing, I have been working in the PowerSchool and the Schoology API to do things like when the section names come over from PowerSchool, it's using the internal expression rather than the external expression, which means teachers get mad that it's, it's 7th period, but it actually says 13A in Schoology. It's like any other bad integration where someone's like, oh, that's the expression, I'll just use that, but they don't know how humans talk about expressions. They just use the robot one that comes out of the sections table. So that's kind of frustrating. I wrote some stuff to fix that. The other stuff that's really cool that I've been doing is I'm feeding the IDs of users, which is teachers and students, and sections back into PowerSchool so that when you're looking at a kid's like quick lookup screen, there's a Schoology link that you can click on. When you click that for a course, it jumps you straight to that course over in Schoology. So that's good for like a teacher from her home row. It's good for an admin who's looking at a kid and goes, oh, this kid has an F in this class Y. Schoology, boom, you jump right to the course for that kid. You can see what assignments they've been doing.
That's cool.
I found myself struggling, like jumping between the two systems a lot, and linking those two things up makes it feel like they're a little more unified in a way that I'm like, I'm kind of, these are connected to each other. So that's been the start of my school year, a lot of that stuff.
Is that a customization, something that we can pay, purchase, lease, anything? We know we're gonna go there. That's why we do this.
That's a really nice, you're a good wingman. You even got the bomber jacket on today. I got a nice wingman with Roger here, setting me up for closing some deals here. Yes, I'm probably going to spin this up into a plugin and make that available. I really, really, really did not intend. Oh, the other one was the parent access codes. It's making the kids' parent access codes available in PowerSchool so that a parent can go, how do I set up in Schoology? Here's a letter from me about how you do it and the access codes to create the account. That was the first integration that I did. I never imagined. I was just like, oh, this is really cool. My school really needs it. And I'm sweating bullets because I'm thinking about all the work I got to do. And I started tying it together and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I could make this a plugin with some schema and people could like run these scripts. And then later I'm like, people are just going to want to buy a service that says sync these two things together and have it run in the cloud and do it. So Eric, the answer is yes. A couple of months away probably, but I started maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago spinning up into a real service that can run, something very, very like negligible in terms of cost, just to make it so that my cloud stuff is all paid for the compute cycles.
That's great. Keep us informed. I mean, we can post your services in our website. I'm pretty sure nobody will care about that. You have always helped, every single district. If you help Roger, Roger helps me and I help other districts. So we really appreciate your work. We need people like you. And like I said, anything that, we can do for you guys to promote your hard work, we're here to do that too.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate that. I'll let you know when that's available. Little ways away, but it's definitely going to be a thing.
Great. So we are at 8:51 mark. There is 66 participants. We're getting very close to the number. Once again, if you have not entered your name and your district in the chat, do so at this time so we can keep a log of who came to the meeting. This meeting is being recorded and also in YouTube Live. If you have any questions, let me know. I put my email in the chat room a couple times, so you can email me directly. The goal for this presentation is to have an open discussion, find out where we are and where we're heading until next week when the state changes things. And then we can go right ahead and share the information statewide, because this is no longer a Southern California group. We actually are merging with the Northern folks, and they are a great group. We have some contacts with them. We are in the process of aligning our distribution list and making sure that when somebody gets notified, the entire state gets notified. So I want to make sure that at the end, I'm going to save my chat and also post it as a record in our webpage. Our webpage is on display, www.ps. I don't know if you need the WWs. It might be just psugcal.org. Just try both, and it will be posted there. Anything else, Roger, Trish, anything that we need to do before we start the meeting?
Nothing that I know of, unless we want to get into CalPAD's frustrations, but we'll pass that on later.
One of the things that we have to remember is that we lost a lot of people for good reason. They retired. They say, let's get out of education. I don't want to do this anymore. And they are enjoying themselves. And unfortunately, that caused new staff members to be put in this situation. And probably last year and this year are the hardest years I ever worked with PowerSchool, with COVID. And don't be afraid of asking questions. Uh, Roger knows. I will text him and he will reply to me and he will say, well, don't you remember to do this? I'm like, oh, yeah, now that you remind me, I remember. Trish and I always communicate about CalPATS and we have a good relationship. That relationship is open for everybody. So don't hesitate to reach out if you're new to PowerSchool or if you're new to your school, you need help, let us know. We're here to make connections. Okay. So it's 5 minutes till the hour, but I think if we start talking now, we can allocate more time for the Q&A at the end. So why don't we just get started? And the first item on my agenda is open discussion about independent study. Anything about independent study that I know comes from my directors here at San Marino, and we're always struggling to find out what is the right documentation because we get emails every other day. There's different websites available that you can get information, but they're outdated. So right now in the open discussion for independent study, do you guys have anything to share about independent study? Ask questions about independent study, not PowerSchool related, more like what is independent study? Is it a short term? What is a long term? Is it a 15-day? Do they have to have a contract? Anything like that, this is the time that you can ask those questions.
Is everyone noticing huge numbers of absences as a result of this independent study?
Well, yes and no. For the independent study, and I'm going to talk about the long term, the new one, not the traditional, because they're managed differently. But I was really upset that the government, the state, they were penalizing the kids for being in quarantine. And that is where we saw the increase on absences. My son was in close contact with a positive case, and he had to quarantine for the 10 days. We actually got back on the 8th day, but he was marked absent. And that was before they said that we can collect ADA. So now he's already with 8 absences. And if he has, 2 more, then he's going to be put into that chronic absentee. So those are the things that we're noticing in here.
Eric?
Yep.
In that case, can't you just go back and mark quarantine and somehow make those absences excused, or does it matter that it was after that the state said that you can get ADA after your son was back?
I don't know if it's retroactive. To be honest, I asked that question number of times, and I just haven't got the answer. I don't know if it's retroactive. I know that they changed it. I think it was towards the middle or the beginning of September, but I don't know if it's retroactive. That's what I'm going to find out.
What I was concerned about is, so even if you've got kids that are out, like your son, and they're excused absences, so when we start reporting our stats at the end of the year, that's going to go up to, the chronic absenteeism. Everybody's rates are going to be sky high with everybody having to stay home or do independent study. Even excuse counts towards that chronic absenteeism. So everybody's counts are going to be really high this coming year.
Yeah, and the problem is that in the matter of 3 weeks, everything changed. I mean, first they did not collect a DA. Second, they changed that. Then third, who's going into quarantine? We started with who needs to go in independent study because of the state laws. Then it changed, are those who are affected by either being in quarantine going into independent study? Well, no, they cannot go because they have to have a contract. And there were all these hurdles that we have to go around. But now my latest information that it's benefiting the schools is that the students are no longer required to go in quarantine if they meet at least one of the criteria. You're supposed to go to quarantine if you are within 6 feet of the student, if you are not masked, and spend more than 50 minutes with that student. I think that's the only time that you have to go now into quarantine. It doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not. It doesn't matter if you are, within. I think it has changed. I think the only requirement is if you don't have a mask, you go into quarantine. And not vaccinated. Let me rephrase that. If you're not vaccinated and not wearing a mask, you go into quarantine. Even though if you're within 6 feet from that student. So those are the things that I'm trying to gather. I want to see if there's a location that is up to date.
Hi, this is Quinn. So my understanding of the new requirement, having spending some time with some lawyers on the new requirements, is that for the SIS folks, it's how can we support the office and the school in terms of being in compliance when audit time comes around. And based on my conversation with the auditors and the lawyers, there's 3 areas that they're looking for when they audit each school, and it will be around attendance, participation, attendance, work complete, and grades. So when teachers are reviewing these assignments that are supposed to be assigned out every day for live instruction, it's different for different brackets of grade levels on how much live instruction needs to be delivered per day. And so we have to track those different areas of participation, of work complete and live participation. And then when they do turn that in, teachers have to, if grades were assigned to those assignments, they have to record those grades somewhere. And what I've worked with my schools to develop a tracking template that I can share with you all later. But my thing for my difficulty with independent studies now is that I have some classes that some students who are going to be out on the independent studies for the rest of the year. So I wonder how some of you guys are managing with scheduling those students. Because I know, like, for example, students who are coming and going out of independent studies throughout the year, I imagine they can stay within their regular roster and just be marked absent for the time that they're out, and when they come back, their attendance would get adjusted based on the work completed. But for the students who are out for the entire year just on independent studies, how do you handle that?
Hey, this is Roger. I'll just tell you quickly what we're doing or trying, because but honestly, we're just inventing this as we go. We're using Edgenuity as our partner for the long-term independent study students, and we're transferring them out of their traditional classes and enrolling them into a special independent study section assigned to somebody we call the independent study supervising teacher. Because we partner with somebody to do both the portal and provide the teaching, because we don't have the bandwidth to do independent study teaching. They then are synced to Edgenuity via scripts that run overnight sent to SFTP, and then the coordinator of the program will enroll them into courses on the Edgenuity side, but we still take attendance on the PowerSchool side in that independent study section. They're initially marked absent with a special additional code we made. And then on Monday mornings, the independent study supervising teacher reviews all the evidence of engagement out of Edgenuity. And then I made a special screen for them to update the previous week's worth of attendance from the absent code, changing to a W code for evidence of work, W for work, that counts as present. So if the student exhibits, evidence of work completed and engagement, and that can be in any one of three main buckets, then the supervising teacher will override the attendance to a present. That's all very top level course. There's a lot of details about that and a lot of customizations and scripts, and I'm still figuring it out.
Roger, are you creating just one class that these students are enrolled into in PowerSchool?
Right now, yes, because it just felt it was too. At the time we had to launch this program with no time, so figuring out how to sync our schedule to their schedule seemed way too daunting. Plus, then they're still enrolled with the original teacher, and what do they do with them? So they're just enrolled into one placeholder section on the PowerSchool side. When they're done with the classes in Edgenuity, the plan is to just, import them into historical grades like we do anything else, like the credit recovery, for example, that we do from Apex.
That's what we're doing also. We have one independent study class, K through 5, and another independent study class at the middle school, 6 through 8. And we move the quarantine kids in and out of their regular classes, and the full-time independent study kids are just in there all the time.
This one section that you created, in terms of minutes, is this section just a full day long?
Well, the elementary school, it's daily attendance, and then the middle school is meeting attendance.
That's a good question, because we're meeting attendance also, and because we have block schedule, I couldn't have that independent study section meeting one day and not another day. So I just checked all the boxes. It meets all the periods, and you check that box in the section setup that said take attendance once for all meetings. And so it technically meets every period.
My ED talked to our auditor, and the auditor said that was acceptable. And the problem is that we have to keep track of the kids who are in independent study for more than 15 days, work samples and things. And but she said that the auditor said that we were fine with the way that we're doing it.
Hi, Betsy, I have a question. So for your middle schools, are you creating a section for each class? Because I know middle school, they have period attendance. They have probably maybe 6 classes. So did you create a section for each? Like language arts, mathematics, some of the...
No, I didn't.
So it's just say similar with the elementary, just one section then?
Similar, but the teachers are keeping track of work turned in using a template like the one that Roger described.
So what are you going to do about report cards then, transcripts?
I don't know. We haven't gotten to that yet. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know.
Okay. Because I know I spoke with another high school district, and what they're doing is they're creating a section for each, for language arts, mathematics, other electives. So they basically have 6 to 7 sections in the high school. Our middle school is something similar, but we just have one section for the middle school, one section for the elementary for each student that's in long or independent studies program.
Yeah, we don't have the manpower to have authorized teachers teach independent study for every section.
For us, we have Ingenuity too, and we just have a teacher that's overseeing like maybe 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes a week, depending if they're elementary or middle school. So that kind of meets the requirements that the state has. but then just for like report cards.
Yeah, we haven't addressed report cards yet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So this is Claudia from Hawthorne. So we have thought about all of that. And because our teachers, the ones that they're doing independent study, they want to continue doing everything online. I am creating the sections for each teacher. So each teacher has a mirror schedule. So it has a regular language art class and then an IS language art class where the student is being placed. And that is because the business office asking us to remove the student from the regular teacher.
Correct.
But we enroll them so they're in the regular class, we drop them from there, we enroll them in the IS class for whatever the contract says. We drop them from there and then we re-enroll them into the regular class again, all that on the same time. That way, their PowerSchool, they can continue doing grades and they can continue doing their assignments online in all the applications that they're using. The only thing is that they have to only do it. They have to like ignore the IS sections and just do it on the regular one.
So basically from the schedule, from the parent or student portal, they could have up to 12 classes then, right?
14, yes.
14, oh my God, okay.
Yes. And that's only the period that, okay, they only will see that on the time that they are on independent study.
Independent study, correct.
For whatever those 2 weeks. So we haven't, we just did a couple of tests. We haven't done all of the teachers yet. We're going to do that probably on Tuesday. So I'll let you know, but that's what we're doing. And we tested on the test server and we can do grades and we can do, the only trick is that if the student is on the IS during the report card time, when you store the grades, you have to like do them by hand because they will, I usually put the last day of, if the student is being here, the last day of the trimester on with your class, give me the grade. So for those students, I'm going to have to store both grades.
Okay.
For that. So it's a nightmare. Everything is a nightmare. It's like Eric was saying, I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating. Well, no, that's not true. I'm getting weight, which is horrible.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So basically you're reporting all 14 sections then for that one student, right? Half of it's going to be IS with the course code of 1000 and the regular is going to be the main course.
No. Everything is the same as whatever the language are. I can remember the numbers, but it's the 9103 or whatever the.
Okay.
I do it. The only thing that section is an IS section and is digital learning.
Oh.
So because the teachers, even if they go into independent study, the teacher is in charge of that student.
Okay, the teacher that teaches the other students, they're in charge. Okay.
It's still their student, and that's the teacher is going to give. If they give the package, that teacher will have been the one that printed the pages and give it to the student. So that teacher is still in charge of that student and correcting the work. So
and this is for independent study, long term, not short term, right?
No, long term. We have a whole school. We have like more than 900 kids on long term.
Okay, I'm talking about the long term. Okay, got it.
But for the short term, I know you're going to have different sections. What would happen if you have a student that is in a section when you are doing a grading term and you have to report that grading term to CalPETS at the end of the year?
That will be, I'm going to have to make sure that I know which students were in independent study on 10-6.
Correct. That's
It
happens to be, are you going to label that student as independent study on 10-6, and that's the one that you're going to be sending?
The nightmare. Well, before we only put them in one class in one period, and I have to create all of the classes by hand for them.
Yeah. The things that I have to consider is like if you're going to have one, this is what we do. We have one teacher overseeing the independent study program. So that one teacher, we have created multiple sections. And then that one teacher will be the local assignment option code. So it doesn't trigger this alignment. So those are the things that you need to think about now. And also your attendance, because at the end of the school year, you need to send the attendance and the stats and all those files. We are trying to keep it as simple as possible.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
the simplicity is for our short term, we are not putting them in different sections. We're just going to use different independent study codes.
Attendance codes.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do. And that is what I wanted to do. My business office does not want that. So I had to jump over all of this extra work to be able to please. We have like the business office and the educational part of the district fighting with each other, and they all come to me and they say, we want this, no, we want that. And it's like, I throw the towel and says, okay, I tried.
But you see, Claudia, the problem with that enrollment that you have in a different section is that, I don't know if I'm correct on this, but I want to make sure that before you hit the 15-day, you're still on the short term, but it's accumulative. If you go into the short term multiple times, once you go after the 15-day, that is considered a long term.
Correct.
And
Yes.
that's why it's easier to use the attendance codes to track. Because when you have the assignments, this is not the long term where you use it's not program, is the assignment time. This is the assignment provided. So when you do that, if the student was out for 5 days, but they only submit work for 3 days, then those are the only 3 days that count against that 15-day short term.
Yeah, and you know what, I'm that's what I brought to them, and that's what I wanted to do. And I've been fighting since school started in August with everybody, and I lost the fight. That's all I can say.
Eric, can you repeat that again, please?
The what? I'm sorry. Repeat what?
Can you repeat that last statement again, of what counts towards the 15-day?
My understanding is that you can be on short-term independent study for up to 15 days, and they don't have to
14.
be 14.
14 and under. 15 becomes long-term.
If you have, let's say, independent study for 5 days on September, and then 5 days on October, and then 5 days in December, now you have to go on until long-term independent study. I don't know how we can manage that. I don't know how we can do that. So if you have 14 days, not consecutive, that you can still be in the short-term independent study. On the 15th day, you become a long-term independent study. But the problem is you can go in and out that program at any time the parent wants. That's my understanding.
That's just it, Eric. That's just it. It's the parents are opting in and out. You have to get their approvals on some of this stuff too. And that definitely complicates things, because even if the math works out, 5 + 5 + 5 = 15, you then have to go back to mom and dad and say, approve this, sign this, we're going to launch you into long term. They may say no, in which case, what happens? It's unclear to me.
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to get information. And I know that we're bouncing around with different ideas, but my goal was to find if anybody has found any good resources that are up to date, because I know that everything is changing. And to us, even though our community is great, our parent support is great, and it's taking us 2-3 days for them to return and get them enrolled into Apex and doing all this stuff, it's just impossible. Because then, you know, they're back on the 5th day, we did a lot of work and they're back in 2 days. And then because they have to sign a contract, even if they go into the short term, a contract needs to be signed if you want to collect ADA.
So for us, our contract, I know Brandy said that she doesn't recommend this, but there's no way to stop this. We have our parents sign a contract open-ended until June of 2022.
Yeah, we thought about that too. In fact,
we're already doing it right now. So that way they could jump in and out, basically. And I know in one of the Q&As, Brandy had mentioned that they prefer that doesn't happen, but there's no way to stop it. So until we hear otherwise, we're just going to continue at that point. So we don't have a contract signed every single time.
that's great. I mean, that's something that I would do too, because everything that we have prevent, they have changed. Like we wanted to count, and I implemented my quarantine codes way before they even approve it that you can get ADA. But yeah, it's a matter of having the state making up their mind and telling us and guide us, telling us that we have to have a program and to implement it by a certain date is not enough. They need to tell us how we have to do it and have guidelines.
I'd be interested to understand what that preemptive contract details, just knowing that short-term independent study looks far different than what long-term independent study does, and long-term independent study having some grade level band requirements in terms of synchronous instruction, so on and so forth. Would you be willing to share that kind of preemptive contract with the team?
I can once I get a hold of it, but that's what I was told. Because when I brought to the Ed Services Department about how it has to be cumulative, she was under the impression that it's not cumulative. I said, no, from everything that I've been hearing, it's cumulative. So once you hit the 15 days, that becomes long-term. And
Right.
then she said, well, she has a contract. What the parents sign is dated to, the contract goes as far out as the end of the school year. So I just left it at that because that's really not my department. I just kind of give it the logistics of how PowerSchool, the attendance code, special programs. But now when I informed her, she said, you're right, it is cumulative. She has to go rethink this and she's going to meet with me Monday again.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just looking at it from an audit perspective, right? You know, when your fiscal apportionment auditors are going to be looking at stuff, they're going to also want to look at those contracts. And just
I'm
making sure.
assuming she already has it approved.
So that might be a good tool for us. That's why I was just asking if you can get your hands on it and share it with the group.
Yeah, I can find out.
That would be something to entertain.
Mhm.
If you're not keeping an eye on the chat, somebody said, Joanna Clark said that Young, Miney, and Core has a very good training on this. I think they're talking about independent study. And they posted a website. That website is Independent Study 101. And she put the link on the chat, so you can also reference that in there too. Okay, so we are at the 9:20 mark. I know that this is an open discussion. We can talk more about independent study, but I also like to talk about vaccinations and health management because they're definitely, we want to make sure that we find a solution to identify the right individuals that they need to go either on independent study, quarantine, or they need to, to be identified. So we can go back to independent study if you want, but I also want to give some time to COVID tracing and attendance and vaccinations. Here at San Marino, what I did is I actually created, and let me bring that here. Let me see. At the district level, where's the health management? Is it on the district? Okay, under health setup, what I did on the vaccines, I created 3 vaccines: COVID-19 for the Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer. I had to create 3 because J.I.J. is 1 dose, Moderna is 2 dose, and Pfizer is 3 dose. Actually, 2 dose plus a booster. Now, one thing that I also have to do is when I set up these vaccines, in the event the state will require us to do this, we have the Pfizer vaccine. I just named it whatever we wanted, and I got this information from the health management page, the CVX code, and the description. And I just recently changed this to 3 dose because I have it at 2 dose. In fact, that I need to probably update the description, because then you can run your reports for those students who are getting the vaccines and manage that. So that's one thing I've been doing for COVID-19 tracking and also vaccinations. If you have any other method, this is a great opportunity for you to show off and give us some guidance and see what else you have been doing. And the way to enter this is just like a regular vaccine. You select a student, you go into their, oh, I think you need to be at the school level. And this is part of one of the customizations. If you see different colors, we're going to talk about that later. When you go into the health, we're having a good day today with health. Okay, there you go. Health, the immunizations, and they're right here at the bottom, and they have their information in here. And I marked them optional because it's not stat mandated.
When you do it that way, are you able, because I looked into this briefly, that section in the vaccine setup where it says bind to a rule. Are you able to write your own rules for this vaccine? Like they have to be 2, it has to be 3 weeks apart. And is there a way to put the lot number in there, which has been a requirement here at Green Dot?
No, there's no need, but I think when you do that, you can create something in there. Right now, I'm trying to see if there is a way that we can actually import the data. We don't want to do manual entries going into here and entering that information, but the one thing that you have to do is you have to mark them all optional. And this way, at this point, there is no J&J because it's over 18, and Moderna, I think, is 16, so there's a few of them. But definitely Pfizer at the end of October is my understanding that 5 years old and higher will be able to get vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. So there's a lot of things changing. So I'm not doing a lot just because we don't have time.
Are you able to do the reporting your district is asking you to do? Like people want to know who's vaccinated, who's not, who's in compliance.
We are actually doing it through another, it's called Privet. We have weekly testings, and we have on Tuesdays, we have the elementaries, Tuesdays the high school, Wednesdays the elementaries, and Thursdays is the middle school. And they go every week, and that's where they can actually upload their vaccine card. And we ask them if they're vaccinated or not. So we're doing another, it's Privet, and I think it's free for the district. It's a state program. I don't know. I can get more information on that.
Essentially outside of PowerSchool, then you're not be able to do it in PowerSchool.
Yeah, unfortunately it is because it's not mandated. We also wanted to start collecting the cards and then uploading them into the attachments, but then you cannot search on that. It's very difficult. So one of the customizations that we're utilizing, it's MBA reports. Let me go back to the home page. Make that bigger too.
Eric, Jason Springle had a great suggestion in the comments about using the comment field to be able to track those lot numbers.
Yeah, and Jason is also pointing out that attachments are searchable, especially if you put them in their own category.
Yeah, but you don't have the dates. You only have an attachment. You can say vaccination. Then you have to open the attachment, and then you have to open it up and look at the dates. Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, if you want to know who's vaccinated just for purposes, going into the COVID plugin, it has great potential. It is free. They're not paying me to say anything like this. But under the COVID plugin, there is the student assessment. So they can actually use the parent portal to check in and things like that. They have the contract tracing and the assessments. I haven't even touched that one. So we use a lot the contract tracing. And we're going to get into that into the customization. So that's one of the tools that we can use, and maybe there will be some updates available that we can track a little bit more the vaccinations for COVID-19.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do vaccine in there. I actually I spent part of last week or this week with the author of that, Eric Scheidel. He was at that conference I was at. But honestly, at Green Dot, I inherited a system where we're not using the built-in health yet. There was a whole set of custom fields they were using for vaccines. So I just added more custom fields for the vaccine type, date 1, date 2, lot number 1, lot number 2. And some of our staff were actually just using CAIR to look it up if they had the authorization from the family to do that. You don't get a lot number when you do it that way, so we just told them to enter CAIR in the lot number, so we knew that it got it directly from the source. So I'm able to I just tell them what the fields are right now, and they can do their own quick export, and I can do my reporting that way. Next week, I have a meeting with our programs director, and she says we need to revisit the screening. So I think we're going to have to basically reinvent the whole way we're doing screenings. And I am going to look at that MBA COVID plugin as a starter.
Yeah, we definitely used it as started, and it was great when they developed it, because even at the state of California, they were doing that. We had to report who was positive and the names and all that information. And now they changed that. They just want numbers. So everything that we create becomes obsolete because the rules change. Now, at the beginning of the school year, when we were using this plugin, and it's still very useful, it allows you to track information of the students who are in close proximity to the one that is positive. But now that the rules have changed, that's what we need to do as well. We need to update the customizations and work on different reports, because now they don't want all the data that we were able to extract, which is also part of the COVID-19 tracking attendance, because what we want to do, I haven't been able, I'm going to show that that's not the right button. Let's see here. The way this COVID tracing tracking works from MBA is you click on that link right there. And in here, this is where you can start typing the name of the student or the staff person right there. I'm going to go ahead and use my son. And I have two. And then there's also my entry. So let me move to the elementary. So it puts the name of the student, and if you have multiple students, you can actually enter somebody else. I'm just going to select somebody else, and it puts it in here. And then you can click on search. Of course, you have to select the date range. I'm not going to use anybody else. I'm going to use my son only, because information will be displayed and then it will be edited when I post it on YouTube. But when you click on search, it will give you the name and phone numbers of everybody within his class, and also the parents. That was great at the beginning, but now it's not as critical, because not everybody needs to go into quarantine. Not everybody needs to be notified that they were in close proximity. We need to make sure that we check to see if the student was present to begin with, because if they were absent, we don't need to notify them that we're not in contact when that student was positive. We also need to know that if the rules had changed, if they were masked or not masked. Everybody in our school is masked, so we don't have that problem. But now we have the problem of who's vaccinated and who's not. Of course, 6th grade to 12th, that applies. Everybody else below does not apply until probably the end of October, when it becomes available for younger kids.
The other thing we did to facilitate contact tracing was there's a plugin on PowerSource Exchange, which lets admins easily view seating charts for teachers without having to go to the subs portal. So that has been recently improved if anybody is struggling there. And then I also wrote an SQL report so that you could see which teachers had or had not set up their seating charts yet.
Roger, do you mind putting the link on the chat room for that plugin?
Sure, I'll look it up and post it in chat.
Also, just a quick warning about that is that people don't really think about two things. When they're doing the searches about the student, it's critical that you train your staff to click that family link, because we need to make sure that if another school, there's another child, another person in contact with that they live in the same home, they need to notify that school and start their investigation process. So if we have a positive case at the high school, I have trained my staff to say, okay, click on that and find out if there's any other students at other schools, because most likely they have become in close contact with that student, and we need to start the investigation in our other schools. And the second thing about seating charts is that they change, especially during the beginning of the year and the end of the term. Students move around. There's new students walking in and things like that. But if it happens to have an old seating chart, it doesn't reflect the information accurately. So make sure that you ask your teachers to update their seating charts as soon as they get the students enrolled in their classes, in their sections, or to make sure that they're accurate, at least every 2 days or every 3 days, depending on how much movement is in their class.
Jason Springo in the chat is also reminding everyone that there is a built-in contact tracing report also.
Oh, maybe later on you can show us, Jason, where it is.
He says it's in
it's in the system report.
System reports, and you can run it. You can also run it per school too.
So it's where?
System reports, down towards the bottom. Hiding in plain sight there under student staff listings.
With the blue little icon.
A student career.
Keep going up, Eric.
You went right
higher.
No, it's under there.
Folder.
Eric, student and staff listing.
No, I'm sorry, where?
Student and staff listing.
Oh, here it is. Somebody say blue. That's red to me. Is this one?
No.
Okay, so let's go back.
Contact tracing.
Okay.
As you can see, it can include attendance, discipline, busing, and other classes.
Great. I didn't know about that one. Thank you very much. All right, I'll run it on the back end here. Any other people have any comments about tracking attendance or vaccinations or independent study? We still have about 20 minutes before Stephanie comes in.
Jason, do you know there's conflicting statements whether you can or cannot run that contact tracing report at the school level?
Kimberly is right. You can see it at the school level, but it'll say it can only be run at district level. And we do it that way primarily because you never know, the kid could be on a bus with kids from another school or other info. So to be able, for completeness of who's going to be in the report, we have you run it from district.
Do you need to select the students that you want on that report?
Yeah, we recommend you select, 1 or 2 students.
Okay. I'm gonna run it to see what he gives us because that looks like has a lot of potential.
So I have a CalPADS question regarding the independent study or distance learning. So if you've got kids that are a full-time, let's say your teacher's class is a full-time class, but various times throughout the year, you're going to have students on independent study, which kind of basically is like distance learning. So do we mark those sections for CalPADS reporting as distance learning?
So repeat that question again, Trish.
So, on a teacher section, there's that where we did last year where you had to mark all of our courses as independent or distance learning.
Mm-hmm.
So if we've got kids now that are coming and going in between on campus and distance learning for, COVID or anything like that, do we still mark that field?
That was a confusion, and I actually asked that question to Brandy, and the answer is depending on how you're set up. Here. Yeah,
she said it's whatever is actually going on census day, then you would flag it accordingly or as of that day, and then it doesn't matter what you do after that.
So basically, as if we're the CalPADS admin, we need to go through and look at every teacher's section and every teacher's attendance for that CBEDS day.
Yes.
Holy.
That's what she said. She said it's whatever is happening on census day.
So what
That
I
is really
in the section, this is what you were talking about. Down here, there is the distance learning indicator, okay? And the online course indicator. Now, this right here, this is a class and it's called Apex. What we do is we have an Apex for independent study. And in the students are actually doing distance learning. So in my case, for this section, the distance learning indicator should be set to yes. And then this one is supposed to be facilitated because the teacher is not providing the instruction. The computer is doing the instruction, but the teacher is there to provide them. So yes, you do have to do the distance learning. Is yes, because they're on a computer, they're not here, and there's not a physical person in front of them. And it's facilitated. But there's also rules that for, I forgot the grade levels, but I think it's TK through 5th, they need to meet at least once a day. And then 6 through 12, once a week in person. So that's part of the participation, I believe, and engagement. But we're going to wait for PowerSchool to see what they suggest that we need to do. But yes, if the distance learning courses are, for independent study, are distance learning, yes, you do have to mark that. And Brandy made it very, very clear.
well, yeah, that I get if we've got a set distance learning class. But what about if you've got a class that's normally the teacher is teaching it on campus, but say, 5 of those kids are actually doing distance learning because they are on COVID. They have to stay home because of COVID quarantine.
Then you do not mark it.
It's
only if the whole class is on that.
The whole class. Okay,
the whole
perfect.
class.
It's a program. It's not a class. They are
Okay.
an independent study program. So you don't have to go and do anything because the teacher of record that is going to be presented to on the 10-6, it's in class in person. If for some reason the entire class is on distance learning on 10-6, and this will happen on TK through probably 6th grades when they have the 1000 code, then most likely if it happens that the entire class is doing distance learning on 10-6, then yes, you have to mark them as distance learning.
Got
But
it.
the
Okay.
entire class has to go.
That makes more sense.
Any other questions regarding the 3 topics? And if you have any topics at this time, this will be a great idea to do the open discussion. Somebody was saying about reports on, what was the Mr.? Yeah, we don't need to search on attachments. We need to search on dates. I guess that was for the health management and COVID vaccine. Okay. Any other questions, guys?
Eric, where did you get the new regulations you said about the mask, whether they're wearing it or not, and that? Because that is not something that we have heard. We were just using the 15, if they were in close contact, less than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, and the kids around them.
I got it from my supervisor. I will go ahead and text him so he can forward me that information, and then I will post it on the chat or put it on the presentation.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we still have about 18 more minutes for Stephanie. What we can do is we can start doing some of the other topics and give more Q&A at the end. Unless if you have any other questions regarding independent study or any ideas, any suggestions, go right ahead. Let me go ahead and text my supervisor. In the meantime, you guys discuss. Okay. So some of the questions that were asked to the group and they reply for independent study setup, and these are going to be questions for definitely for PowerSchool. They've been using the IS setup for years. However, we have not used the 3 fields on the California State Report info as we did not know that they were for. Our staff has worked just fine without them. I would like to see from a teacher view the separate roster for students on short-term IS and how the teacher can input attendance for percentage of work completed. So that was one of the questions, and these questions were actually made available to PowerSchool and Stephanie, so she will be answering those questions. Okay. Saratoga Union SD asked, I just started looking in today. I don't know what that today means. It's a couple days ago, probably. How is the program view on the teacher end setup? It appears I lose access to the first 3 days. Is it tied to the reporting periods? That's another question that we're going to be covering. So please make sure that if they don't answer your questions, ask PowerSchool directly when they're doing the presentation. Lennox is asking, should the attendance code for full-time independent study report positive or negative attendance? Steps to set up the engagement logs and how to properly set up the sections for IS. Able charter schools, independent studying schedule setup. I'm assuming, is this at the beginning of the school year when you're doing master scheduling, or it's a little bit unclear for me. So maybe you want to expand.
That was my question. We already covered that early on.
Oh, great. Okay. And then we're going to be moving into the, San Marino. How do we start? Where do we start? To be honest, I didn't even know this existed. We're involved in so many projects that independent study was not a priority for us. So I don't really know how it started. And if we were to offer this next year, how can this be implemented? It can be done at the master scheduling time? Do we have to do anything set up? What do we do at the end of the school year? Are there any other settings that we need to address when we do the end of the year process? So those were my questions for them too. Now, I'm going to put them on the spot because I just thought about the last 2 today. So hopefully they're able to answer those questions. Then PowerSchool is also going to look into the attendance. And the questions that we had was, how are the districts tracking the 15-day threshold from short-term to long-term? Once a student reaches the long-term status, how are districts handling the synchronous requirement? How are districts introducing teachers to track synchronous student participation on IS days? Where is that being stored for audit references? A lot of these things, I'm going to say that they're very easily trackable through Schoology. So if you have a Schoology, I think that will be a great idea to pay attention and stay through for that presentation. Okay, another question for independent study attendance. How are we setting up the IS classes? And how are recording attendance for IS for ADA? That is definitely part of the presentation. And this is my question. In the setup guide, and there's the link, it states that we need to change the attendance preference to daily. Is this going to change our settings from the daily to meeting for the high school and middle school? I was a little bit confused about the documentation. So hopefully they can address those issues. Then, of course, the COVID-related questions. Per email with PowerSchool earlier, PS is not planning to do any adding COVID-19 to the immunization tables until it becomes a requirement, and it is outlined on the CDC website. Are districts planning on creating 3 custom fields, 1 for each available option? If yes, what happens to this when it becomes a requirement? I think we cover that in detail with my presentation with creating the 3 different ones, and make sure that you use 3 different ones because they have different codes and different doses. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask. Or anybody else has any other methods, please share it. How do you know if reporting vaccines COVID-19 will be required for the near future? That's a state reporting question. We're on the same page. I think they will require something in the near future from what I've been hearing. And how can we track the students who are vaccinated instead of using the immunization records? And we covered some of that too. Okay. So right now, the plugins, what I did, this presentation will also be shared. And this, let me see how we're doing on time. There's 10 more minutes. Do you guys want to cover right now some of the plugins and then leave more time of Q&A and probably questions to PowerSchool, or you guys want to take a small break right now for, 7 minutes and then come back?
I'd like to review the plugins again.
Anybody else?
Was there any interest? Chris Mogia reached out to me, but I was just wondering how many of you are using Edgenuity and are interested in how we set up our rostering sync to be scheduled automatically through SFTP. If I could do a quick demo of that, if there's enough interest.
Sure. I mean, anything that helps a district, even if it's one person, this is why we're here. And then we learn maybe it's not the same systems, but the protocols might apply as well. You want to do that right now?
Sure. I'll share briefly if that's okay.
I stopped sharing. You're a co-host, so
All
you
right.
should.
Got to reconfigure my screen here. Get all this stuff out of the way. Can you see my screen, Eric?
Yes.
All right, so we created, this is high level, and if there's interest in this, I don't think it's anything I would sell. I mean, we could share it, but it's somewhat unique to us. But Edgenuity sent us their specs, right? A template for how you have to send them data. But to track who is in long-term study, we created a custom field, and I created an independent study screen that is linked off to the left side there. This is being recorded, so I got to be careful. So it says Edgenuity status, active, canceled, or withdrawn. So an Edgenuity student would be marked active. And then I wrote a Power Query that would, based on that custom field, would go and run those. So if you go to importing and exporting, and you go to Data Export Manager, and in general, that's one of the things that we did a lot of learning out at this conference we had this week, is using the API and using Power Queries. When you write a Power Query and install it, it becomes part of your things you can pick from. So I'm just going to go to my templates because I've already set it up as a template. It's called Edgenuity Students. And my query grabs the data in the way that Edgenuity expects it with their column headers. And you can click Show Records to see the data. Go to the next thing, and then you can specify the file name, the delimiter, and then once you save it as a template, it becomes available to schedule, and it goes into scheduled system templates. And that's where you can go to or Edgenuity Students. You click on the details for scheduling it. You pick this active, what days of the week, what time. You, in the remote connection manager, you set up all the SFTP details that Edgenuity gives you for sending us stuff to their SFTP. And once you do that, it becomes available in this drop-down list to send directly to them. And then you can just say, send me an email completion report. So that's the basics, high level of how we automatically roster every night students to Edgenuity so that they show up in their system. We haven't completely automated the scheduling of the classes because, like I said, we put them in one independent study class, and it's too complex to map all of our classes to theirs.
I agree with that, Roger. And you know, the other factor in this whole thing is we don't want this so easy that it's just adding toppings to a pizza, right? We're asking parents to commit to independent study for the year. And so we're actually taking steps, I think, in my organization to make it a little bit more challenging for the parents, because we want them to at least fill out a form, you know, opting in and out, and really emphasizing to them that this back and forth is not really acceptable for the students' learning, as well as it is for the negative impact that it has on our staff. So I agree with you. The scheduling piece of the actual courses, we're still handling manually, but that was a very helpful walkthrough, by the way, of that. So thank you.
Yeah. So I wish I always tell people those kind of decisions are above my pay grade. I don't get to make the call on the policy. I wish we were more strict about that, but we have a lot of movement back and forth, and I really worry about the impact on the kids' learning. Our churn rate, I call it the industry term churn, you know, kids going into long-term independent study and then, no, I don't want to do this, and coming back to in-person, it's pretty high. You know, at one point I was as high as 25%. And that's really rough. It's just created a lot of overhead work in addition to, you know, on top of that, I just worry about, like you said, about the impact of student learning.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
Sorry. Didn't California say, though, that we couldn't put a telling parents that they have to, if they accept independent study, they have to do it for a certain time? Because that's what we originally were telling our parents is, you sign up for independent study, you are there for the semester. And the state of California said, no, you can't do that. Parents, kids can come in and out whenever they want.
That's
I don't
correct.
know. I don't know.
That's correct.
That is correct. That's my understanding as well. And that is happening in our district. We are seeing a lot of movement of students. You know, they start out with the long term and are now deciding that they want in-person instruction. So there is a lot of movement going on within our district as well.
I believe that there's even a timeline of when they request to return to independent study that has to be met to get back in person. And I believe that it's 5 days.
Yeah, you have to respond to their request within 5 days. We do it. We have our system set up to do it just within one. But yeah, it's not been fun. It's been all consuming. It's all I've been doing since school started, and sometimes more, late nights, weekends. Guys, I have to go, but you guys keep talking. I might be back later in the meeting.
Thank you, Roger.
Thanks, Roger.
Yep.
Okay, am I on mute?
You're unmuted, Eric. I just want to let people know that I know we were talking about customizations, and Roger earlier talked about the seating chart viewer for admin. I did post in the chat the link to it and the download ID in case anybody's interested.
This is a document with the revised date of 9/17/2021. This is on page 407. It's the COVID-19 exposure management plan guide in TK through 12 schools. I'm going to see if I can put that on the chat. I don't know if this is the document that we were talking about, the new changes. Okay, let me see. Okay, so this is, I'm going to go back to page 4. You guys can see my screen, right?
Nope, you need to share it again.
Okay. Share. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, we see it.
Perfect. Okay, so The COVID-19 exposure management plan guide in TK through 12 schools. It is dated 9/17. That's a revision. I think the things in yellow are the ones that are highlighted for quick changes. The page 4, optional modified quarantine for TK through schools. I think they have some literature in here. So I put that in there. I'm not 100% sure. I have not seen this document before. Like I said, I do a lot of stuff that my management asked me to do, and I believe what they're telling me is true at that time. So take a look at that document, and then we can discuss that at a later date. But I think that's the one that talks about the changes about who's masked and who's not unmasked. Okay, it is 9:58. I'm checking to see if our friend Stephanie is on the line. Are you there, Stephanie?
I am. I've been listening aptly to all of the discussion.
Oh, I'm glad I wasn't talking bad about you.
Always be honest, Eric.
Never. You have helped me so much. I'm going to make you a co-host so you can also show your screen. Okay, done. And I'm going to stop sharing mine. And if you want to start right now, it's already 10 o'clock. We're right on time where we are. You can go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay, Eric. And I did not get the list of the questions from you. I don't know if I missed it or if it got misdirected, maybe went to my junk mail. But if you could share that with me, I'll make sure to answer all of those questions.
Sure. I can definitely do that. I'm going to go ahead and share this PowerPoint presentation because it does contain the questions. Okay, and I'm also going to save it as a PDF, so it's easy for some of you to open.
Thank you, Eric.
So the presentation is on the chat, and the questions are in there too.
Thank you. I'll pull those up when I'm finished with my main part of my presentation. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right. Primary topic today, of course, is independent study. That's what everyone's concerned about most, but I am going to touch on a few other topics today. I can make this presentation available for the group later, potentially through Eric or whatever way he recommends. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephanie Cummings. I'm the product manager for state reporting in the state of California. I run the user group meetings, focus group meetings, responsible for making sure everything that the state decides gets implemented in PowerSchool. Today, we're going to talk about independent study. That's going to be the bulk of the presentation. Then we'll do a quick review of the student assessment rosters functionality and touch on a few topics of other things coming up in the future. And then I'll open it up for Q&A, and that's when I'll pull up the questions that Eric has posted and try to get through most of those. If you have questions during this, make a note of them or put them into the chat, and I will try to get to them at the end of the meeting, but I'd like to get through the presentation first. And if I have to go back to slides at some point about questions, I can do that. And I am, after I do the slide presentation, I am going to go into PowerSchool and actually step through how these things work. I hope I can get all of that done in an hour. All right, traditional independent study, which is full-time independent study. In PowerSchool, set this up, you have to go to the district setup and create a special program for independent study. We recommend that you create one for each school because of how our independent study module works, but it's not
I can't hear her anymore. Can anybody else?
No, I can't hear her either.
Yeah, Stephanie, you're kind of breaking up a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. No, it looks like I have a to my server, and it looks like my network dropped me from that, which caused a bit of a, so I'll have to reconnect to that before I can show you things in PowerSchool. Apologize for the complication. All right, so I'll start back at the top. Program for independent study. We recommend that you do a separate program for each school, because but only if you're using our independent study module, which I'm going to go through in detail. This independent study module.
You're cutting out again. I can't hear you.
Stephanie, I think it might be your audio.
When you save the program. Make sure you do not select the qualifies as a special program checkbox.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Everyone lost you on that last one. I think you might need to redo it. Your audio.
I did redo it. Did you lose me again?
Yes.
Okay. Third time's the charm, right? All right, so to set up for tracking independent study students, at the district level, you need to create a special program for independent study. When you create the program, make sure you enter independent study, parentheses IS, as the program name. You could append things to that after it if you'd like, but the very beginning part has to be independent study IS. Make sure you choose IS-full-time independent study from the AEP program pop-up menu and then submit. We recommend that you create a separate special program for independent study for each school, and make sure that you do not check the box that says qualifies as a special education program. You have to define the attendance code. This, if you're using our independent study module that was created specifically for California about 10 years ago, then you need to define the attendance code that's used to record present attendance for independent study. That may mean that you need to go and create specific codes for this purpose, and we'll get to that in a minute as well. But to define the code to use for independent study present credit, go to the district setup, school info, click on the school that you want to set the value for, and then you'll have to scroll about 2/3 of the way down to the page, and there is a field called attendance code for full-time independent study. When you click on that drop down, it will only show you attendance codes that count as present. Click the one that you want to use and then submit the page. We'll see how that works into the module a bit later. So when you're setting up their attendance codes, we recommend that you set up two separate ones, one for complete and one for incomplete work. And of course, we already have the ability for you to map the code for incomplete into independent study classes. It's a CalPATS code category. And it is the incomplete independent study category as need. And so you want to make sure that your one that counts for incomplete is set to count for that. We do have plans to add another drop value to that drop down for the completed independent study, so you can map that as well. That will be needed for the changes that they're making on the stats. So make sure that the code counts towards ADA calculations and towards membership. And it is important to understand that the default blank attendance code cannot be used for independent study because an attendance record is not actually created in those cases. So I know that it did say to enable daily, but you can have meeting and daily enabled. Which one you choose to use depends on you. You don't have to choose one or the other. Just make sure that you set it at the section level as well. And we'll get into that setup piece shortly. In the Bell schedule, if you've set up both meeting and daily, make sure to set the period that counts for daily attendance in the Bell schedule and enable the attendance bridge to be two-way. All of the other settings will be based on local needs and processes. I'm just going over the ones that are critical for the independent study setup and reporting. At the course level, you can assign the special program, the independent study special program, to the course. You only want to do this if all sections of the course are independent study. Otherwise, there is a flag at the section level that you would set for each section. And that means that you would set that the section is for independent study only. You should have separate sections. We'll get into a bit more of the details on that setup in just a minute, but how you can track the independent study as well as their regular classes at the same time. So you can leave that blank if it's not at the course level, if it's not the entire, all sections are not independent study, and then set it at the individual course section level. Also at the section level, you're going to want to make sure you set the independent study flag to yes, and that you choose the school-specific independent study program from the program pop-up menu. And again, only if the entire section is set to be for independent study. Make sure to set the attendance mode of the section to either daily or meeting. For each student, you're going to want to create a special program enrollment. You can do this en masse. The only caveat when you do this in mass with the students is that it does not, you can't populate the California specific fields en masse. It just creates the program enrollment, and you have to touch each record to add the independent study values. However, those independent study specific values are not required unless you're going to use our independent study module. If you've chosen another method, it's simply just using the codes will suffice. So there is a value in this program record for full-time independent study attendance period length and a full-time independent study attendance start date. The attendance period length defines the frequency that the student is checking in, and that will be defined in their independent study contract. If they're checking in daily, once a week, twice a week, put in the number of school days that the student needs to check in. The full-time independent study attendance start date is the first day that they are starting in that contract. And all of the check-ins will be scheduled automatically based on the combination of those two fields. So if you've set it to be weekly and the start date is on a Monday, then their check-in will be every Monday. And I'll give you a demonstration of how that works on the teacher side towards the end. This just is making sure that you set up their enrollments and their attendance appropriately. So the workflow is to complete the district setup, then the school setup. Some of you I know are adding a new school. If you need to add a new school, then you need to make sure that you follow the process that's documented in our online help to make sure all of the California specific fields are populated. Here's more information on the full-time independent study specific fields on the special program enrollment. So once you've established their check-in frequency and day, then at each scheduled check-in, the assigned staff member will navigate to the appropriate section in the teacher portal and perform the following. There's a special independent study attendance icon because the course has been set to independent study and you've selected the program. And you'll review each student's assigned work for completeness and determine the amount of credit that the student should be given based on the amount of work completed, represented in days. Example here is students checking in every 2 weeks. They're giving 10 days worth of assignments. If all of the assigned work has been completed, credit is awarded for the full 10 days. If a portion of the assigned work is incomplete, then the staff member makes the final determination regarding how many days worth of work the student has completed and enters that value. When you've determined that value, there's a box at the bottom of the screen where you enter in the number of days being credited for the selected student. And that code that you've set up at school info, the attendance code for IS, automatically gets applied to the proper number of days in that reporting segment for that student. So if it's a 10-day period and they got 8 days credit, the first 8 days will have that code set. For status reporting, you'll have to go into the days that are not complete and apply the code for the incomplete independent study days, but that's for status reporting only. And I know you're going to have questions on this, and I'm more than happy to go through it in detail once I get into PowerSchool. Reports in PowerSchool that are built off of this module that we created specifically for California. There's the student attendance register, which returns a week-by-week detail of attendance for the full-time independent study students. The student must be enrolled in a school that's included in the report. They must be enrolled in the selected full-time independent study program, and the school can't be excluded from state reporting. Independent attendance number by grade -IS for independent study. It indicates the number of students who entered, left, or were already enrolled in the IS program during the reporting date range. The student must be enrolled in the school that is being included. They must be enrolled in the program. The special program must have the AEP code attached to it for the IS-full-time independent study. And they must be enrolled in a grade level chosen when running the report. This is built off of the existing attendance summary by grade, but specifically pulls out students who are in independent study programs. You will also see a summary of all students like you do in the regular attendance summary by grade, but the information is the columns and the data that's displayed is specific to independent study students on that section. Student absence summary report, STAS. We just, in the last vendor meeting this week, we finalized the changes to the template with the state. They're going to add a new column for completed independent study days, which is why we'll be adding that as a CalPADS attendance code mapping type on your attendance code setup. And then the calculation for the days attended will be updated to include these days as part of the total. So again, we're going to add a new CalPADS attendance category in PowerSchool for completed independent study. And this will be used for calculating the completed independent study days for the updated STAS template. That is the only purpose for having that. Just like the, just like the incomplete independent study days is used for STAS. Find my typos as we go. Okay, so this, of course, the independent study module, since it was created before the onset of COVID, is primarily meant to track work completion. But you can use the student engagement and participation teacher portal to track the students' participation. Using the independent study module will not be required for STAS reporting. Setting the codes to use the appropriate CalPADS category is the only requirement, and then assigning those to the students as needed. But to use the built-in AEP independent study reports, you will have to do the following. You'll have to set up the special program, one per school. You'll have to enroll the students in the special program along with the independent study specific fields that are populated there. And then for each section, the independent study flag must be set to yes, and the appropriate independent study program has been selected. To utilize the built-in independent study attendance functionality in the teacher portal, the following setup is required. You have to set up that code to use for independent study, which is per school. Same settings at the section. Independent study equals yes, and the independent study program is selected. And then for the student, the special program enrollment for the independent study program, and then the attendance period duration and start date. This will make more sense when we actually get into the system. And before I move on, if you have any questions on this, feel free to put into the chat, and I will get to it at the end. But first, I want to go into the SIRS, the student assessment roster functionality, go through that briefly, and then we'll get to a Q&A session. So in December of 2020, we released the functionality for districts to automatically upload their student roster files to ETS and you get there from the district office going into special functions. And at the very bottom of the page, there's a link that says create student assessment rosters. The page includes functionality for generating, viewing, and uploading student group and roster files. It uses the existing API setup and credentials that you've already got defined for score reports. Since they're both linked directly to ETS, they were nice enough to let us to have everyone reuse that same API. It's just a different call. There's a online help is available for this, and I'll make sure that that's linked in this presentation before I post it out. So when you click on that link, what you'll see at the top is the schools to process with a list of all of the schools. You can either choose to select all, or you can choose a single school for processing or multiple schools for processing. Once you've selected the schools for processing, then all sections will display for the selected schools. All sections where the CASP subject area has been set to one of the following values, which is either math, ELA, or all. And we'll review that as well. So any section that has that value set to a valid value will be presented for processing. You have the choice to pick and choose which sections you want to upload, or upload them all. I would think that at the beginning of the year, you're going to upload them all. And then as they change, as the rosters change, if you know which ones have changed, you could pick and choose those specifically and only upload those, or you can just on a regular basis upload them all. By default, it will do all sections. So once you've selected the sections, you'll see an upload button up at the top of the screen. And you'll also have a view button. When you click on the view button, you'll be able to see the exact data that's going to be generated, and will be uploaded if you choose to click the upload button. So it's a complete set of records for the assigned lead teacher, as well as any additional teacher assigned with either co-teacher or job share role. So if you've got one lead teacher, one co-teacher, and one job share, there will be 3 separate complete sets of records which will include every student linked to each one of those individually to upload to the state. A separate file is generated for each school and uploaded individually. When you're viewing the file, you can also choose to download the file and look at it if it's a lot of data in there. And you can choose to either go back and make some changes and regenerate it, or you can click the upload button and send it straight to ETS over the API. There's a group name that gets assigned. Anyone who's in this call who had to do this manually up until this process was created in PowerSchool knows that the group number is critical. They can't be duplicated. And so we worked with a focus group to define how the group name should be generated. And so it's a concatenated value of the school year, the teacher's last name and first initial, the class expression, the course number, and the section number. So once you've clicked that upload button, there's a separate section on the page, which you'll see in a minute, where you can view the status for any file that's been uploaded. And that status comes back from ETS as the process is occurring. So you may have to refresh occasionally to see the updated status. To assign the CASP subject area on a section, you go to the start page, school setup, and at the school level, and select a section that you want to edit, verify all of the term, schedule, etc. Make sure that you've got all the lead teacher and any other staff assigned as you would like, and then select the appropriate CASP subject area value from the drop down and save the change. Again, the options in that list are math, ELA, or all. And they made it all instead of both because they wanted to allow room for potentially other subject areas to be in there. So that's it on the SIRS. And again, I will demonstrate that in just a minute once I get logged back into my PowerSchool server. You guys talked a lot about tracking COVID vaccines. The advice I have been giving to customers is to go to the CDC site and follow how they have it set up there. I think they have a total of about 8 different vaccines with different formulations by different manufacturers, and that includes vaccines from other countries. Whether or not you use them all is up to you. You will not be able to bind it to a rule, but when we get to the point where the state does start mandating COVID vaccines, we will create the rules that need to be tracked, and you will be able to bind your existing vaccination to those rules. And we will make it, depending on how the state wants it to be reported. If they want to know that the formulation, we'll report it that way. If they want just to know how many doses a student has had and whether it was a 1 dose or a 2 dose, we can do that as well. Even though you'll have multiple rows with each formulation, we can write the rule so that it will look across all of those and assess based on values entered in the combination of the 3. I don't know yet if they're going to track the booster separately like they do for DTaP. If they do, that might need to be a separate row as well, but waiting to hear from the state on how that will be implemented. And as mentioned earlier, I think they probably will be doing that very soon, since we'll be able to get even 5-year-olds and up vaccinated very soon, and some districts are requiring it already. Importing assessment scores. Eric asked me to be sure and go over this topic. I had been waiting for the state to finish its requirements on the new student test settings extract. They have decided to push that out yet again. So we're going to go back to the drawing board and not worry about accommodations just yet, and just get the importing working again for you. And we'll try to get that done as soon as possible. But I've been holding off waiting for them to finalize that so that we could tie it all in together. But they've pushed it out again. And so we're just going to move forward with the importing with that huge file that now has all of the assessments in a single result file with like 192 columns. So you'll be able, we plan to set it up so that you'll just go to one location, click to import the file, and based on the, I believe it's the assessment code, or there's a column in there that identifies which assessment it is, and it will be written to the appropriate record, the appropriate test record based on the number in that column. So if it's a CASP one, it'll write to CASP. If it's if it's something else, it'll write to that. If it's a CAST or anything extract that you have set up, anything that's supported in that import file, that result file will be able to import into PowerSchool, assuming, of course, that you've created the test settings themselves. Currently, we have the ability for you to generate those test records, the required test records and test types and doses. I'm sorry, not doses, the different score types. We generate that for you automatically for some of them, and we're going to be working on a way to generate them all. We just need to figure out if it's going to be individually. Probably give you the option to either generate them individually or a button at the top to generate them all. But I think most of you will probably have quite a few of them set up already and only need to add individual ones. But the all button will be available for folks who are new to PowerSchool so that they can get them all set up at once. All right, I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to try to go to PowerSchool, and I'm going to have to log back in. So bear with me while I get logged back in. And I'll demo how all of this works for you.
Okay, we're getting very close to the 10:35 mark. We're going to be starting pretty soon. I just wanted to confirm that the document that I posted, Exposure Management Plan for K through 12 of schools, it is the document that we were references about the new changes in the quarantine procedures. So that's the document that my supervisor shared with me. And that's what we're using to identify those who needs to be quarantined for students with no mask and no vaccination.
Eric, I'm ready to start sharing my screen again.
Yeah, let's get started, please.
Okay. All right, so we are in PowerSchool. So first of all, we want to talk about all the places that you need to go to set up for independent study, the independent study module. And I want to show you first, we'll go to the help in a bit. So inside of PowerSchool, you'll need to make sure that at the district office, you've created your programs. So let's go there. Now keep in mind, you are not required to use this independent study module. If you have another way you're doing this, you're just fine to create your own process, and the only thing that will matter is for the stats with the codes. And this is functionality that has been in PowerSchool actually for close to 10 years, maybe more. It just wasn't widely used, mostly used by county offices of education. Until now. And so you can see I've created one independent study program for each of my schools. One high school, one middle school, and one elementary school is what I'm demoing today. And I've chosen the IS-Full-Time Independent Study Program as the AEP program. AEP stands for Alternative Education Program. So the P is actually redundant. The program name, I've done the Independent Study IS, and then I put the abbreviation of the school that this particular program is for next to that, so that I can be sure I'm selecting the correct one when I'm at the section level or the student level. And so you can see that I've got 3. And of course, these show up on the special program page, and you can click to see a list of all of your students who are currently enrolled in that program, and you can make them your selection or work with them in any other way. If you want to run a report for them, you can do that. Let's go, since we're at the district, let's go to school info.
Hey, Stephanie, can I just mention that last page you were on? It'd be really nice, an enhancement would be to be able to do it by date and show inactives. Like kind of like the other special program page. That would be fantastic.
So filter, basically?
Yeah, and that way you can see like all the kids that have been in the program for that year and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, you can do that with the reports as well, but I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So Apple Grove High School. Way down here. I have picked, for the attendance code for full-time independent study, I have picked ISC, which I have defined as independent study complete at each school. You will only see codes for the school you're working with when you come to this drop-down box. So you'll need to make sure you create the codes at every school where you are offering independent study. And that is only, again, that's only used for the teacher in the grade book, which only matters if you decided to use our independent study module as for tracking everything. So let's go to a school. I'm going to go to Cherry Hill Middle School. And I'm going to go to sections. And we'll, oops. That is not what I wanted to do. My touchpad is very sensitive. All right, so I'm going to go to school and then sections. And you'll notice that here we've got all of our regular courses set up, and then I've also got this independent study classes. You'll see that when we get to individual students that I've set it up where the independent study section is used for attendance. All the other classes are used for tracking other things related to the subject, such as grades, participation, etc. That is my recommendation, but you do by no means have to follow that, but it simplifies. Students can go in and out of this independent study class as they go in and out of the program. And in their other classes, while they're on independent study, you can give them a code that does not count for ADA on the days when they're in the independent study program. So if we go to this independent study program class, give it a second. You can see that I've done, like a couple of people mentioned earlier, I've made this independent study section span the entire day. If it stops, as soon as it stops loading, I've made it run for the entire year, since kids can come in and out of it as needed. Made it span the entire day. And then down here, I've set to count to take attendance once for all meetings. So then, and we've also got this setting down here, if we needed to actually the, where is it? Well, there's the CASP subject area that you need for the SIRS reporting the student roster. Where'd it go? There it is. Options for math, ELA, and all. And here's also where you would set up the distance learning portion of the setup for the section if appropriate. And you should leave the main one. We've made it so that you can enter multiple date ranges. If the class has changed, you can track those changes. We will only report the value that was on census day based on the dates in those records. So you can, if you want to track that, the history of that, you can, but it's not required. All right, so I've got the section set as independent study equals yes. The program is set to independent study Cherry Hill Middle School. And that's really all that's required on this side. So let's go in there, let's look at a student. I think most of the students that I picked are in the B's. So let's look at Sarah. And let's go to her special programs. Sarah is a 7th grader. She signed up right now for the entire year. That could change though. You could end up with multiple records here with gaps in between them if the student is in and out of the independent study program. So here I've got the start and the end dates, and the end date is required. So you'll have to put something in there. I've picked the program that's specific to the school the student is enrolled in. I've populated the full-time period length and the start date, which was the first day that she was enrolled in the program. And I've submitted that. I'm going to stop sharing real quick. I'm going to go to the teacher side, and I'm going to show you what this looks like on the teacher side, because I have to switch to a different browser. All right, so now we are in Power Teacher, or Teacher Portal. Let me get signed in as my independent study person. So you'd see this teacher is actually assigned independent study sections in multiple schools. They've been assigned as the independent study coordinator and the check-in person for all 3 schools. And so she can choose between the 3 different schools that she and enter attendance as she needs to. I'm going to first go to Cherry Hill Middle School. And you'll see that there's an independent study attendance link here that only shows up when you have those sections that are set up accordingly. You click on this link, and it gives you a list of all the students enrolled in that independent study section. There's a weekly here where you can highlight the area that you want to record attendance for. So let's go to Sarah again, and let's say today, you can see that today is the check-in, the last day of this period for her. So we're going to award her 5 days. I just type the 5 and hit enter or submit. And now she has a credit of 5 days. That attendance code has been applied to all 5 days in this period, and she's good to go. You do the same for all of these students. Of course, you're going to be evaluating them independently based on the work that they've completed and deciding how many days to award. And then you just go down the list as you're meeting with them. So let's go back. I'm just going to share my entire desktop. Let's do that. That way I don't have to keep unsharing. All right. Let's get this over here. All right, so if we go back to PowerSchool, I'm going to go to special programs. I'm sorry, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to go, and then I'm going to, for all my students at in Cherry Hill who are in the independent study program, these are students who are both in the class and in the program itself. I could make this my current selection of students. And as I mentioned in the presentation, it's not built into this functionality because at the time, no one was tracking. This was just for county offices of education, and we didn't have an independent study present code that you could track. So if we go to the reports, I want to show you, there are two reports here that you can use. They're under the state reports in the alternative education program section. So these two reports here are both specific to the independent study module functionality that is built into PowerSchool. We've got the student attendance register, and this is broken down by reporting segment, or you can use a custom start or end date. You can run it for the selection of students or all students, and then you can choose your code. So you can see here that this independent study module per se. If you could pick a code, and any student who has that code and is enrolled in a special program will be included. And so I'll submit that. And actually, I probably should not have used that date because that's a date that is mostly in the future. So let's look at this completed one that I ran yesterday. So we have one student in here who was not enrolled during this week. And then you've got a 1 in each day that the student got credit. Their total instructional days, how many days they were not enrolled, and the days not credited and days credited, and the total number of days in the period. And so
Hey, Stephanie, I think your sound went out again.
days. So we now know by looking at this that we need to go in on the 17th of August. It looks like my connection went out again. So you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I've lost my connection to PowerSchool again too, so you'll have to bear with me. I apologize. So now we know we need to go in on the 17th, and we need to attach that code to the student for the days not independent study, days not credited, the one that you have mapped to that CalPADS code. And that's for STAS. So that you make sure that value gets populated correctly in the STAS column. Let me see if I can get connected
It's
again.
going to be every Friday because it looks like it's depending when you met with the student. It's going to take the last day all the time. If it's 5 days and you put 4 days of credit,
it's always going to start at the beginning of the week. Yes.
So always going to be like a Friday absent.
It's not an absent. It's independent study incomplete.
Which they don't get ADA, which means an absent.
Okay. But
right.
If they're checking in with you every 2 weeks, how would you do that differently? I mean, if you're awarding X number of days of credit, how would you pick which day to not give them credit for?
Yeah, that was one of the questions in the chat too. And that's what I'm saying. It's fine. I mean, the total number will be equal at the end when you run the report.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to show that the student is always consistently absent or not completed on a Friday or Thursday if there's only 3 days completed for the work.
And we can't do that though, because according to the state, we can't award credit on any day that the student didn't actually do some work, check in with the teacher, or have synchronous learning.
Now that's going to depend on the grade level, how often that has to be. But if that's not every day, at some point you're going to have to decide which days to give them credit for. If you gave them a packet for a full week's worth of learning, you'll have to.
But we do all of ours, only our TK and kinders get packets. Everybody else does their work in their Google Classroom or their Seesaw, and then it's recorded in PowerTeacher Pro. So we can't just do this. You have to be able to say which day.
Okay.
Say it was Wednesday that the student didn't log in, didn't complete any work. Even if they did enough work the whole week, if they didn't do any of those 3 things on that Wednesday,
so you're basically operating your independent study as distance learning. Doing like you did before, even though they potentially have a contract. So you don't have to use this built-in module. You can just use the codes and award the codes as you need. You do not have to use this module.
But what I'm saying is this module will not work for the state. Per the guidelines, you can't just arbitrarily choose a day, have the system choose a day. You actually have to give the credit on the days that they actually did work.
But if they're only checking in once every 2 weeks, which is how traditional independent study is typically operated, you don't know which day they didn't work. You just know that they didn't complete all of the assignments.
We do, because they're doing it online.
So we're supposed to do like a check-in, and then it's 2 pieces. So there's a check-in, that's one piece, and then there's actual students logging in and doing.
Right, which is the attendance, which is the participation and engagement piece, not the ADA.
No, it is it's included in the ADA as well.
Correct.
The number of days, yes.
No, the specific days.
Okay.
This is especially true for charters who have a contemporaneousness requirement for the independent study.
Okay, well, we might need to make some changes.
Day.
You might need to make some changes then so that you can choose which days. But this was created in cooperation with the County Offices of Education, and we developed it to their specifications.
Is this for traditional independent studies though?
Correct.
Yeah, and traditional independent study doesn't apply to the new guideline, because the new guideline requires us to have live instructions for I think K to 3 or 4. It's every day.
Correct.
For 1 hour.
Correct.
So that part gets applied to the other component of work complete that then gets credited to ADA. So it's just one component of the 2.
Correct.
Correct, and it's a little bit different for 4th through, we go up to 8th grade, but for a 4th through 8th, it's the check-in, and then daily, if they complete their work, that counts towards their attendance, but they don't need to physically meet or virtually meet with the teacher.
And so it sounds like we may need to give you the option to choose which days to award the credit for, or maybe you want to set it up so that the frequency is every day and you're only entering 1 day at a time.
Yes,
right. When I saw you do the attendance part from the teacher side, where you just typed in a number, that I didn't understand that part, because
that was based for each student in their special program enrollment. When you put that attendance period length, that defines how often the check-in period is. And so that student that we were looking at, it was once a week. So it was 5 days. If you made it if it was 1 day, each one would be independent. You would only be able to enter 1 at a time. But that assumes that you're checking in with them every day. So you do have that control, but again, you don't have to use this functionality if you don't think it's going to work for you.
I like the functionality that you're showing, but we have to be able to follow what the state has told us has to be done. And I was not aware it was only for charter schools. But.
And again, if you set the frequency or the period length to 1 day, then you'll be awarding each day independently when you're in the teacher portal. They'd be like taking regular attendance. It kind of defeats the purpose of this module, which is to be able to award multiple days at once with a predefined code. I would think that at that point, you just want to be entering the attendance on the normal student attendance screen.
Okay.
Stephanie, can you go back to that PowerPoint, that Power Teacher, where you assign the number of days of the work completed?
Here?
Yes. So I see that you can enter that. Is there a way that you can select in here? That's what we're saying, which day not to mark. Like if you have at the end, it has days earned, and then you can have like pickers, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
No, that's what I was just trying to explain it. You'd have to make the frequency be every day, and then you would click on each day independently. The date range that shows down here would be a single day.
Can you show us that setting?
Yeah, I think if we want to use this, that will be the solution. It's going to be a lot of work, but it can be done all at once.
But honestly, at that point, it would be much better to just use their regular attendance screen for that if you're using the codes that are specific to that. The whole point of this module is to simplify putting in attendance for these students. And if you're doing it every day, this doesn't really make sense anymore.
Well, you're not doing it every day. You're going to mark it every day. You're going to mark which it is. Let's say I'm going to be working on this on Fridays, every Friday, and I'm going to say Monday is going to be the day that they did not complete because they did not go to the Zoom or whatever other requirement is.
I see. So it could be like an autofill, and then you could just go in there and remove it if they were absent.
Yeah,
you could.
The words I see.
So let's go look at the student. See if I can find it.
Yeah, that the autofill would be tricky. We know how teachers are with taking attendance, and they're not always accurate.
But this is the person who's reviewing their work, which traditionally is not their teacher who's assigned. It's someone who's assigned to deal with these independent study students and assess their work. Because if they've got multiple classes, only one person is going to be assessing their work because this is a daily value.
So it will be up to the district to choose. You want to follow the state guidelines, there's going to be a lot of work, no matter what. If you
I'll work with Brandy and folks at the state because my understanding was as long as the number of days was accurate, that it did not have to be specific, but I will clarify that. And if we need to make changes, we will.
And that's my understanding too, because it's work-based.
Right.
It's not daily attendance or anything. That is the participation and engagement part that you were saying.
Which we should continue to track through using that daily participation and engagement form.
Correct.
Which is why I recommend that you also have them enrolled in their regular classes so that each teacher can track that for their class.
Yeah.
This is just the amount of ADA awarded in their contractually defined reporting period length.
We also were told that, like for our TK and kinders who aren't doing it online, that we needed to send home a calendar and their parents need to sign each day that they completed schoolwork. And that's how we measure if they're not online.
Is that a state guidelines or is that your school policy?
That's what our auditor and our attorney has told us. Again, we're a charter school, so it may be different, but that's what
that's totally different from the other non-charter schools.
Yeah, I had never heard that before.
Yeah, me neither.
So it sounds like we may need to come up with potentially a separate way for charters to track, or maybe charters won't be able to use this module until we can make the changes that we need to make. You just have to use the actual attendance codes and assign them on the days as appropriate.
Which is what we're doing.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the student. I'm going to go back to
Stephanie,
Sarah.
can I ask you a quick question about the setup that you mentioned? We have to do one for each school at district.
The programs?
Yes. I just wondered
if you're using this module. If you're not going to use this module, then it's not required.
Okay, I just wondered about that only because we've been using it for all types of different attendance and not for this module specifically, but we create one at district and then they can see them at the school level. And so when they use it, it assigns the school ID code for that grouping. So is the setup of having them identified by school at the district level just for ease of finding them more easily? Because
it's for assigning at the section level. When we looked earlier, we went to the section level and you had to pick a specific program. But I mean, you could use the same program across all schools, but it's not going to work the way this was designed to work. Doesn't mean it won't work.
Because I would think that at each school level, when you assign it at the section level and pick, say if it was just called independent study and you just pick it, that it would be specific to that school because you're at the school level assigning it, just like when you assign it to the student at the student level. So that's why I'm just wanting to make it clear that it has to be a different one for each school at the district level versus just one generally called long-term independent study or whatever you want to call it. And then assigning them and just picking that one when you're at the school course section level.
And that's going to depend on whether or not you want to use this built-in functionality or if you have another defined process that's working just fine for you already.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And we can make some adjustments to how this works. Give me a second, I lost my connection again. Let's see if we can get. All right, let's go back here. Not sure why, but my VPN connection to my work is not working very well today. All right, so I wanted to go to this student's attendance screen, and I wanted to show you what it looks like when the teacher has said 4 days or 5 days for the student. And am I in the wrong year? Where is the independent study class? There we go. It's the second one on the list. It's not showing. I saw this yesterday. Maybe it's daily. There we go. So it got assigned as the daily code. And that's probably why the instructions say that you have to have daily set up. But you can also have meetings set up as long as in your bell schedule, you have a period defined as counting for daily and you have the bell schedule, the bridge set to the two-way sync so that the value is getting written to the daily period as well. And so you can see in this week, this is the Friday that was showing that the student did get credit for. If you wanted to change that, you could. But at that point, you might be better off just be using the screen to track their attendance completely rather than using the built-in module.
Then the teacher, if you're going to use this and then change it, let's say because there's only going to be just a handful of people who did not meet the 5-day work assignment, then the teacher needs to tell you what day they didn't attended their sessions in person or whatever they need to track.
Yes, it could. But again, when we designed this, that wasn't a factor. And so that's not built in at the moment, but we could absolutely figure out how to make that change. The bad news in that regard is that this is part of the core PowerSchool product. It's not part of the California installer. So it would have to come out through a core update, unless we could figure out a way to add on the California specific side, add some sort of functionality, extend it so that you could do that. And maybe all it would be necessary is at the bottom there, instead of just doing a number, we give you a range of the days and you mark which days you want to give credit for. Instead of putting in 5 or 4 out of 5, you click the 4 days that you want to have credited. That I don't think that would be that difficult of a change, to be honest. And that would solve the problem if you click on the days that you want to give credit.
That will be a great solution. And I think for charters, that will be a necessity.
Understood. But you can see that because I had that class spanning all 6 periods in the day, and I had the start and end times, this is how many minutes they're getting credit for, because they did the equivalent of a full day's work.
Now, is this something that it has to be stated on the contract if we go this way, that each date has to be accumulated to a certain amount of minutes?
Well, I would think that if you're giving them a full day credit, that it's going to be the equivalent of the number of minutes everyone else is meeting in the bell schedule, because it's supposed to be equivalent work.
But it's also up to the teacher's discretion. So we've broken down, our attorney said to break down the number of minutes, daily minutes that we have per day. And then we averaged that over the week. And then we said, okay, so each day needs to be worth 3 point something hours for TK and Kinder and 5 point something for our 7th and 8th graders.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's the teacher's discretion. So if the teacher says they did what they could, that's fine. Then they give them credit, and they would have a hard time fighting it if a teacher gave them credit, because that's a teacher's professional decision.
Got it. Yeah, that's why when we were going over this earlier, I said someone needs to review the work that's done and decide how much credit to give. If you give all 5 days credit, then all 5 of these days would be filled in. But if the student was supposed to do a book report as part of the work that was sent home, and they didn't, or an essay, and they didn't do that, then you have to decide how many minutes or how many days that was worth and subtract accordingly. Again, this is just an option. It is perfectly acceptable for you to just define your codes for independent study complete and independent study incomplete, assign those as appropriate to students, and go for there and just put them in the program. This is just, was asked to demonstrate the existing functionality in PowerSchool in case folks wanted to use it. So that's what we're doing.
Stephanie, on this
Yes.
existing setup, that Friday that has a blank there,
mm-hmm.
If you ran just a typical attendance report, a PowerSchool, would that be considered, would that show up as an absence?
No, since it's blank, it's going to be a default present, which is why you need to come back here, like for stats and for everything else, you need to put actual code in there. You need to come in here and you need to assign that ISI or whatever code you defined for independent study incomplete.
Yeah, that's what I was asking earlier too. And that has to be linked to the absent, right? Or mark as an absent.
And you would do that when you set up the code itself.
Okay.
When you choose that present status, you would choose absent instead of present.
Is teacher able to do that out of their portal?
Able to do which part?
The absent code?
Not from the independent study module. No, it wasn't designed that way. That separate link that we went to here, this is only awarding days of credit. Now they could, let's see if we go back. go back to the start page. And see what happens if we go here. Do they have the ability to change it from here? Yeah, see, it's not even showing here because they were in the independent study and it's assumed that that's separate. That might be something that we would need to look into adding as well, give them the ability to edit it here.
If the school has decided not to use the module, how are they supposed to set this up?
You would just use the codes, the independence, you'd use the combination of program, special program enrollments and attendance codes.
And then it would show up correctly on this page.
It's only going to show with this special link for independent study if you have set it up with the full module, to work with the full module. This is part of the actual built-in module. If you're not going to use everything that goes with the built-in module, then this won't show up.
Thank you.
You would just take attendance as normal.
Why do you need the special code set up and enrolled if you're using just controlling it by the attendance codes? Or did I misunderstand?
For STAS, for the STAS report, there's a column.
STAS report, okay.
STAS report has a column for incomplete independent study days, and they're going to be adding a column for completed independent study days.
Right, but that'll be marked on each individual attendance code. Why would you need the special program in addition to that?
To track the days, the times that they're enrolled, if they're not in there continuously.
Okay, so that some days they're independent study and some they're not, because like they're quarantined in and out, in and out, in and out.
Right, like Eric was talking about earlier, they go on short term for 5 days, and then the next month they go on short term again for 5 days.
Yeah, but wouldn't that still be controlled by the code if it's complete independent study? And
you would want to have a way to track the days that they were actually in independent study for audit purposes, I would think.
Well, we're using a different code for that. We created brand new codes just to track that.
I understand, but how do you know which days we're supposed to be awarded those codes versus regular codes?
Okay, the teachers were taking care of that. Okay.
The independent study teacher takes attendance and indicates whether or not it's an incomplete, whether or not it was a independent study day completed or not completed. And those are tied to the independent study attendance codes. So why would you need a special program just to do that?
To show which days they were supposed to be in independent study, which days the teacher was taking that type of attendance. If they're not in there continuously, they come in and out.
Well, if you set up a separate course, then you're tracked those, haven't you?
So like I was showing earlier, where you've got the independent study course that's separate from all of their other courses.
Yes.
In that case, you probably wouldn't need to do that. But if you've only got, like some folks were talking earlier, they're only setting up a single section for tracking the independent study. If you're not taking them in and out of that class, then somehow you have to know when it's regular attendance and when it's independent study attendance and be able to show an audit trail for that.
We've never had to use that for any of the independent study we've used on PowerSchool for the last 10 years. We just have our IS contracts.
But that was before AB 130.
Right. We still tracked it, but we used different attendance codes.
Again, I'm offering options. You can choose to track it any way you want.
Thank you, Stephanie.
can I ask a question about what you just said? So if I am having each teacher having their own independent study course, language arts, regular language arts, independent study, I don't have to put the program for that student, the special program?
There are multiple ways you can set this up. It all depends on how you want it to work for your teachers and whether or not you want to use those built-in reports. So if we go back to the student, you can see this student, if we go to the student's all enrollments, this student has their independent study class, which meets for all 6 periods. And then they have their regular classes. During the time when they're in independent study, they're going to get their completed or incompleted codes in this class only. These other classes will be used for the times when they're not in independent study and for tracking grades.
So let's say that you have this independent study 8:12 to 7:30. That is definitely within census days. So at the end of the school year, with the end of the year, CalPAT's certification is going to require for 7 through 12 grades. If you do not have grades on an independent studies, they're going to give us an error because you did not store because the student was present in independent study on census date, but the grades were not entered because he went back into the regular classes.
But the grades should be entered regardless.
But you cannot, I mean, if it's there for 5-7 days or, even 15 days, it's not enough to assess a term.
No, I understand. You're not going to put a grade on the independent study. It's going to be on their individual classes. That's
Right,
the point.
that
That's the whole point of having them.
So isn't it going to give us an error saying that there is a section with no grades on the CalPATS validation? Because it's expecting grades and attendance on all of the sections.
Right, Eric, which is why I think you'd have to, on those sections, turn off that reporting, right? Can't you isolate those sections to not report final
Correct.
grades? This does get sticky. And I'm concerned about overlapping attendance and possibly when you commit final grades, there being some wonkiness around this. Not to deter from this process, because Stephanie, you're doing a great job explaining something that is still relatively new to me in PowerSchool. So I'm very, very thankful for this presentation. But there are some of these, especially issues for charters, that I think we might have to go and discuss additionally.
I agree. I agree.
So, but this is super helpful, and I share Eric's concern just about when you post grades and stuff. Yeah, we don't want them to post grades for the traditional courses. So in our PowerSchool setup, we only have independent study students associated with an attendance in an independent study course that facilitates the connection to Schoology, which we wanted, but we are treating the independent study courses if they are coming from a separate school. So it'll be a separate end of semester score import process for us. We hope that works.
Chris, how are you going to identify those grades for a specific course? If you only have,
I'm not even going to go into details because I don't want to get us off track, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you offline about it. So thanks.
Perfect.
And, I can make a point to bring, in our next user group call, we can bring this up again and we can discuss it more. And we could talk about the charter school piece of it and potentially even set up a separate meeting with some charter schools to talk about those needs.
We love a separate meeting, Stephanie, because I don't want to encroach upon the traditional school district's time. It's a different configuration, and we want to be savvy of that and bring up all the issues that Elizabeth and others have been raising, which have been just totally on point and very timely meeting. So I, again, appreciate this conversation.
And as I mentioned, this was created 10 years ago. And so a few things have changed since then, and we might need to make some updates to make this work exactly like it needs to work for the AB 130.
Absolutely. Understood. Thank you.
The sad part is we're going to do all this work, and PowerSchool is going to do all this work and everything else. And it's only good for this year. It's going to all change next year.
Well, this, like I was saying, this functionality has been in place and available to you all along. You'll still be able to put kids in this program. You just won't be required to offer it anymore.
We've been using it almost since inception of starting PowerSchool. From when it was introduced, we've used the special programs, but obviously not this new feature of it. But it works really well for splitting out, your regular attendance versus any kind of other attendance that you want to distinguish, and specifically like for SDC kids.
Yeah.
And independent study.
Yeah.
And Amy's asking a question about the fact she's not distinguishing ADA earned by independent study completed versus regular short-term independent study contract completed. I don't think there is a difference between either they completed their work or they didn't, whether it's short-term or long-term. I think it's the same. If anyone else has any comment to make on that, I mean, somehow you're going to have to get it into the STAS, and the STAS doesn't care if it was short-term or long-term. It's all one big bucket.
That is true. Under the law, they're both the same. There's no, we just call them short-term and long-term, but there's not any difference between the two.
Right. They're in and out. They can be in and out as much as they need to. It's just, and that's what's new about all of this. In previous years, if kids were on independent study, they were typically on independent study for the entire year. Or from whatever date they started independent study till they finished school, because they were on independent study for other reasons. Because they had to work during the day, or they couldn't come to school every day. For some reason, they needed to be on independent study. And I'm creeping into Schoology's time. I need to finish this up. I appreciate all the questions you guys have asked, and I think I'll start a thread on the California forum about independent study specifically, that we can use to exchange ideas and maybe communicate how some of you who have this dialed and you've been doing it for a while, how you're doing it, etc. Until I can figure out a better way to track it. But if we could get that thread going, then you could bookmark the thread and just keep looking and see what everybody else is doing.
I think that's a great idea, starting that, because we can also post in there any updates that we have, because I'm also concerned that, we're doing something right now and everything that we do is going to be different next year.
Well, the participation and engagement we thought was going to be only for 1 year, but look, we're using it again this year for the kids who are on independent study.
I just want to make sure that we're still on track. It's 11:23, and I know independent study with the Schoology was next, and they've been very grateful. If we want to continue with this, maybe we can put it towards the end, but at this time I would like to move on because we want to give them the chance. And Stephanie, thank you very much. It really gave us an idea of what we can do in PowerSchool. The problem once again is there's so many variables with the state and the requirements, and now we have even added a new layer that is different from charters versus regular schools.
Yes, so, and I have known from the beginning that we were probably going to make some changes to this module because of AB 130, but they keep changing it, so I don't want to do anything till I know that they've finished changing it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Okay. So thank you, Stephanie. We're going to go ahead and move to Eric, and I think it's Adam. They're going to be presenting some information about independent study with the Schoology. A lot of districts are implementing, different methods of reporting, and I think this is a great opportunity for them to show us what the Schoology can do, and to, of course, showcase their product. So go ahead, Eric or Adam, go ahead and take over. You should be a co-host.
Yeah, thank you. And can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the verbal response. Nice to meet everybody. That was a great discussion there. It just kind of shows that when the laws change like this, everybody has to scramble, right? Everyone's trying to figure out what to do. So I actually was taking down a lot of notes and hearing everyone's different perspectives as we were going along. So we're going to transition here a little bit and talk about Schoology. Adam, can you move on to the next slide? And we'll just introduce ourselves. We'll do this actually pretty quick because I think we have to make up some time. So we'll probably do this in about 15 minutes. And really what the goal is today is to show how folks can be using Schoology to track, well, for their independent study programs, and how it tracks some of the things that are listed in AB 130. So we're going to spend some time doing that. Just wanted to introduce myself first. I think I've met probably about half of the folks on this call at one time or another, but my name's Eric Toms. I'm the regional sales director for Schoology. I'm in Glendora, California, so I live here. I cover all the western states, but I spend most of my time here at home working with different districts. So good to see you all that we've met, and nice to meet the ones that I have not met yet. So Adam, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll jump to the next slide?
Yeah, really quick. Adam Larson, Director of Instructional Strategy. I'm here on the call to walk you through the platform. Hopefully, I'll use some of my previous teacher experience in the classroom and working at the district level to help inform what I'm showing you. And obviously, a lot of the conversation that happened already really I think dovetails nicely into what we're going to show, which is how some of that instruction can actually happen through independent studies. So, Eric, thanks for the invite or allowing me to come.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so we've heard some different methods of what folks are doing, how they're running their independent study program. I heard some folks using Edgenuity, some are using it in conjunction with Schoology, some are using Google Classroom. There's just kind of a lot of different methods here. Some are using Apex Learning. So just to kind of set the stage, and Adam's going to kind of just run through some of these things for those who are using Schoology. You may not be aware of some of the functionality that resides in here. For those that this is new to, you'll just see how this can work really well for an independent study program. And I kind of broke it into two sections, like specifically AB 130, because they call out things like tracking student progress, like making sure content's aligned properly to standards, having parent teacher conferences, all these different things that are part of that, asynchronous versus synchronous learning. All of that's all in Schoology. So we'll touch on all of those items. Even if you're using PowerSchool to track, 504s or IEPs, that can be seen inside Schoology as well. More important, there's analytics there, so you can see when people are logged in, how much time they spent on each assignment. There's completion rules, things that just kind of help track all of that good stuff. And then down at the bottom, just in general, even outside of AB 130, just things that help with independent study, being integrated with all your current tools that you're already using, whether that's Google or Edgenuity or any content provider. And then also being able to submit work in different ways. So that really is key for the younger kids. So I heard some folks earlier talking about how they kind of separate the schools or the sections, whether it's elementary or middle or high school. And so just wanted to show you some of the new functionality around that for the younger kids, what makes it really easy for them to kind of participate in class. And so we'll talk about that. And Section Lincoln's been talked a lot today already, so I don't know how much we're going to get into that, but Adam might touch on that a little bit. But the other side is just making sure that parents are in the know and knowing what's going on. I mean, they're a member of your community, and this is a good way to pull them into the entire experience. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Adam. Of course, ask questions. If you want to jump off mute, you can do that. If you want to drop a question in the chat, we'll try to answer that as well. But Adam's going to run you through what an independent study course could look like inside Schoology and try to touch on some of the items that I just mentioned.
Great. Well, let's go and just jump right in. As Eric said, we're trying to be ambitious with this time to show you how Schoology can meet with your AB 130, how it works with independent study in general. Also trying to show you from a couple of different perspectives, whether it's a secondary teacher, elementary teacher, student, parent. We definitely want to try to show you a lot of these things in the short amount of time. So for those of you who are not familiar, this is the Schoology homepage. So when a user logs into Schoology, this is what they would see. We have a courses, groups, and resources as our kind of main areas. Courses are where the instruction actually flows. We'll jump into this world history course in a moment. Not only, though, can courses be taught by teachers, teachers can also be part of courses. So especially as you're trying to train teachers on how to manage this independent study and what that means for their instruction, you can actually create trainings in Schoology that will help them through that process. Not to mention, of course, learning how to use Schoology as well through self-paced courses that we created. We have a groups area in Schoology. So as you are building those components for students to go through asynchronously, like those discussion forums or assignments or even assessments, those things can be built in Schoology and disseminated through our groups, whether it's a world history PLC or a curriculum instruction type group, even things that are happening outside of even your district or charter network. You might be working in conjunction with others. You can do all that within Schoology. Even student-led groups that you still want them to be part of the varsity basketball team or the seniors, who are talking about college graduation credits. All that's going to be available for you to see here. Resources also really important. We're not going to get into that much today, but especially when it comes to your Edgenuity or Edmentum type content, if you're wanting to use that as your main content source, but still want to manage kind of the overall communication and collaboration within Schoology, you can do that as well by bringing that content in via resources. So, but in general, that's kind of the overall layout of the main components of Schoology. Let's actually jump into this world history course and really start talking about how these courses can be built to kind of meet your needs. At the very top, you'll notice it says world history in section 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in a traditional blended type classroom, those sections might be the different periods. So period 1, period 2, period 3. But especially in the world that we find ourselves in, those sections might be students who are in the same content, right? They're going through the same kind of prep in terms of teacher speak, but they have their own particular needs. Things are being tracked in different ways. Well, just know when it comes to building out your content, you can have all those sections linked together into one place. Now, a lot of that depends upon the course code being the same, but section codes being different. If you have different course codes as well for those, we can do something known as course merging, which also can be done as well. So something that you can always talk about with your customer service manager or client success manager, and they can definitely help you walk you through those options. Now, in the course itself, the tools are always going to be on the left-hand side for users. We'll talk about some of those, specifically the gradebook, mastery. We'll talk about analytics, conferences. Those are going to be important for you. But in the middle area is where the content is actually being delivered to students. And this particular course has been set up so that all the teachers' Google and Microsoft content is embedded right in Schoology. The way that she's structured the content is with units and lessons, but this could be, weeks and days or chapters and topics, whatever that teacher might need. But specifically in lesson 3, what she's done is created not only lesson 3 content, but content that's specifically geared for the in-person cohort and those that are focused on at-home cohort. Now, if I jump into lesson 3 specifically, you'll actually see how that content is set up for those particular needs. So for the in-person, they're going to have a think, pair, share, where they're going to talk about a topic that's being directed via Schoology, and they're having that conversation in class. And then they're checking out what that oral presentation schedule is to make sure that they're lined up to where they need to be. And then they're maybe having a discussion forum within class to still have the teacher oversee what's being discussed, but it's all happening within that particular cohort. And this content itself can be aligned to a particular section so that only that section sees it. So you don't have to worry about the different sections accessing content that they don't need to have. Whereas the at-home cohort might have content a little bit different. For instance, they might be going through a Zoom link to actually have a synchronous experience. Maybe that's set up at 9 o'clock, or maybe the teacher's off period in a normal day. Well, that teacher can start up the Zoom presentation right here in Schoology. And whether it's Zoom or WebEx or Google Meets or Microsoft Teams, we integrate with a lot of those. And I can even talk about our conference solution as well. But just know that synchronous portion can be handled in Schoology too. But in addition, you might have content that you're wanting those students to work through. So this particular content is EduPuzzle, which is a video kind of based tool that teachers can embed questions and a text, and that's all a third-party tool that's embedded right in Schoology. But this could be that Edmentum or Edgenuity content as well, because again, it comes in via thin content cartridge. You can have it structured as just part of your lesson. But either way, you might have those at home and that in-person cohort. There might be content that is shared in unison. So for instance, that lesson 3 discussion board where you're wanting everyone to talk about a particular topic, or you have a oral presentation that, even though those students aren't in class giving it, you're maybe doing that through one of those Zoom links and you're having them present. You can still have that assignment set up in this lesson so that now when you're grading, all those things can be cataloged or aggregated for you in the gradebook, and you can keep track of that. Even an assessment. So if you're wanting to deliver an assessment that is leveraging our over 18 different question types that you can build right in the platform, you can do that as well. So the idea here is that when you're needing to provide content to students for independent study, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, all that can be done through that Schoology framework. And of course, too, and Eric, I kind of went over this at the beginning, but all these courses, all these sections automatically can be pulled right from PowerSchool SAS. So it's a teacher's not creating these courses. They're not enrolling their students, especially those who have been using Google Classroom. We've had this conversation with a lot of California districts, right, Eric, that you don't have to do that anymore. All that can be set up automatically through the synchronization. All right. So not only, though, with that content that's being built out, there's some other things that I think might be important for you as well. And that really is to track student progress. Within this particular folder, you have the ability to create what we call as completion rules. So that within this particular folder, within this lesson, you can actually see what students have done and what they haven't done. And you can do that quickly and easily by just clicking on student completion and then adding the requirements as needed. And those requirements could be something as simple as, for that assignment, they need to maybe view the item, or maybe for that test, they need to actually score at least a 90 out of 100. You have the ability to set all those things up so that now you can actually track the progress that the student is making through those various pieces kind of quickly and easily. So that definitely is going to be something that's available for you as you're building out content to make sure that students are working through those paths. And by the way, too, when it comes to the content that is being built out, those folders can always be published by certain dates. So let's say you still have your units and lessons, but lesson 3 you want to make available at a certain time. You can have it published at that time, made it available for students to go through, and then you can even have it end at a certain time as well. So you have the ability to control all those pieces as content's being built out. All right. So let's talk about some of the, and real quick, Eric, was there any chat questions that were coming in? I want to make sure that I know that we have a short amount of time, but I want to make sure that we're on point with where our audience is wanting to talk about.
Yeah, I think you're good. I haven't seen anything come in yet, and I think you're on the right track. So go ahead and keep going.
So the other things that I want to talk about are some of the tools that are available for teachers as content is being delivered through Schoology. And one is, of course, the gradebook. And the gradebook is going to aggregate the discussions, the assignments, the assessments, any of those things that are being done within the course are going to be aggregated here in the gradebook. And this is where a teacher can see those different sections, see the different grading groups. This is something I didn't get a chance to talk about yet, but even within sections, a teacher can create a specific group of students that they want to spend special attention to, maybe those with ELL or RTIs that you're wanting to even individually assign content to. You have the ability to do that. The grading periods and grading categories can be found here, and those are going to be mapped right from PowerSchool. But the other big piece here is the ability to sync the changes to PowerSchool. So if you're wanting to have these grades being reported back into PowerSchool by sections, even within this course, you can do that. And not only the individual grades, but the entire assignment column can pass back over. So there's some really big pieces with that. In addition, though, if you want to have grading not done in a traditional way, you can also do more a standard-based grading format. And to do that, I'm going to actually switch over to Janet Argus. Janet's our elementary teacher. She teaches kindergarten, but since she's kind of the math specialist on campus, she's also helping out with a lot of other courses as well. When I go into her kindergarten course, she has the same kind of structure built out with folders. But now when she goes to the Mastery tab, it actually keeps track of all the content that's been aligned to standards, and those standards can come right from PowerSchool, by the way, so you don't have to recreate them in Schoology. And when you look at literacy or math or science, it kind of gives you the overall status of where students are at. And then when you click on literacy specifically, it now will give you a more detailed view of a scale that, again, you can create as a district, where students are at according to that scale. And not only that, you can actually dive into a substandard underneath that. So you can not just see literacy, but how are they doing on confirming an understanding of a text, for instance. And now within this substandard, you can see performance, and you can see the different assessments that were aligned to that standard and the data associated with that. Now, some of your districts might not be ready to do this kind of standard-based grading. That's okay. The traditional grade book is available for you, but just so you know, as content's being built, and especially if the content's built at the PLC or the curriculum instruction level, if you align it to standards and the teacher pulls it into their course, or rather you push it into their course, which you can do via templates, that content is automatically going to aggregate into mastery based upon that student's performance. So there's no additional step here. There's no additional lift. All that data is just ready for the teacher to be able to consume and help validate the instruction that they're giving and see the progress that students are making. And by the way, this is also data that can pass back into PowerSchool SIS. So if you are an elementary district, which Eric, it sounds like there's a couple of districts on the call who are, K through 8 that might be doing this kind of grading, this can pass back for you. So you don't have to worry about even teachers transcribing this over. And not only all of that can pass back, Eric, I'm kind of hesitant to mention this, but there also is an integration with attendance. And I know with the way that attendance is being tracked, I'm probably not going to get into that much today, but just know that there's ways for certain type of attendance to also pass back right from Schoology into PowerSchool. So there's some abilities there. Now, something else I wanted to talk about, especially when it comes to the various tools that are available for the teachers, one is the members area. And this is where if you have content that's being delivered within the course, you might need to have teachers working together collaboratively. And that can really help a teacher actually as they're trying to deliver that content, because they can set up what's known as section level role permissionings. So for instance, Jeffrey is also in this course. He doesn't have the ability to see any grades. He can't view them. He can't add them, but he can edit materials. So if he's needing to build more content or make some things for his specific students that he's overseeing as a co-teacher, he can do that. Or you can have a co-admin who's actually edit grades and edit materials, has full-blown access. So there's ways to even do that to allow for content building with a team of teachers. And as that content's being gone through, there's also ways within the Schoology platform to track analytics so that now as a teacher, you can see the students in terms of when they last logged in, what material access that they've done, time spent, which actually has an algorithm associated with it in terms of how students have open windows and content that they're actually working through. And this content can even be kind of zoomed in on when it comes to student like Xavier to know exactly what he's done with his assignments, discussions, and assessments. And this is really the tip of the iceberg. And Eric, if we had more time, we could even talk about Unified Insights and how a lot of that data comes from both PowerSchool, SIS, and Schoology platform to allow for even deeper level of tracking. There's some really cool things along those things as well. But for today, I wanted to make sure I covered those things. One other thing, though, before I jump over to a student perspective really quickly is when it comes to your elementary students, especially those who are doing independent study at home, you need to make sure that you have a quick and easy way for those students to access the things that they need. And what Schoology's done, and especially if you're a Schoology user, you probably have already heard this, but you have the ability in the course options area to go to course settings and now choose an elementary theme for your course. And what that elementary theme does is instead of having students consume content in this particular kind of fashion, they have a very unique user workflow. So for instance, if I log in as Xavier as an elementary student and I go into that kindergarten course, he now has a streamlined view into the content that he needs. So he has his favorite animal activity, which is an assignment that he's going to have to do, which is tied to a rubric. He has his stations work, where some of those assessments are being done. But when he clicks on your favorite animal, it gives him the assignment right here in Schoology. So the ability to take a picture, record a video, do audio, even upload or type, all that can be done right in the platform. So there's no additional steps. The student doesn't have to go to some other solution to try to actually make a submission so that the teacher can assess and things like that. All that's done right here in Schoology. And in fact, not only for that, but if they go into stations and they maybe start the Show Me activity, this is where they're now taking an online assessment. So as you are delivering that content, they can really be able to work with that content, be able to feed Growler the kind of cupcakes that he wants, or be able to drag and drop the different animals based upon the letters as they're sounding it out. Even a video of maybe you giving a lesson, and as you're giving the lesson, they're annotating alongside you to make sure that they're showing what they know. All that can be done in Schoology, and all that can be tracked, and all that can be part of your overall assessment of that independent study. So there's definitely a whole lot of things that those elementary students can do in the platform. Not to mention, of course, your secondary students as well, that when that secondary student comes in, not only do they have access to their courses, but it's all of their courses, their world history course, their chemistry, and they can have overdue notices and upcoming calendar events. So they know exactly where they need to go and when they need to get there. In fact, if they go into that world history course and they're wanting to sign up for an after school tutoring session, they can do that right here. And they can even respond with an RSVP. So they can say, yep, I'm attending this. I want to know more information. And they can join that Google Meet or that Zoom link or however you want that handled. All that can be done within Schoology. And of course, when it comes to independent study too, the user group that we oftentimes don't think about is that parent. So how is a parent interacting with all of this? Well, if a parent logs in on a mobile device like an iPad or a smartphone, they can go right to the Schoology app. And when they open up Schoology, they now have their own courses and groups that they're a part of. So whether it's an introduction to standard-based grading or a parent orientation course, they can have that right there in Schoology. They can even be part of a bilingual parent advisory committee where they're asking questions or sharing their comments or concerns. They can do all of that there. But in addition, if they click on My Children, this now gives them access to their students' information all here in Schoology, and a lot of times tied right from PowerSchool. So if you as a parent want to know when that Xavier submitted the show me assignment or what favorite animal he submitted, you can see that. If you want to be able to switch over to not just Xavier, but Sarah, the secondary student, you can now see all of Sarah's activity. You can see the enrollments, you can see the recent grades, the overdue notices. You can even jump into that world history teacher as a parent and see what content's being delivered, and all right here with just an iPad. Even the Edmentum content that's coming in can be accessible right here for the parent. I know this was a biggest thing for me this last year as my kids were at home learning. Schoology was a huge godsend to actually have my 3 kiddos all in one place for me to be able to oversee. So Eric, we said that this was going to be an ambitious 15, 20 minutes. Hopefully I didn't talk too fast, and maybe they can listen to this recording at half speed. But you do a good job of keeping me honest. Is there anything that we didn't cover that we need to kind of spend some more time in, or?
Yeah, we got a question from the group that we got to answer, but sure. Ambitious, yes, but I got to say that elementary course was pretty cool. So that looked pretty neat there, Adam. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, Eric asked a question around course analytics, and he wanted to know if you can sort it by a date range.
So right now, the course analytics, specifically in a course, can't be done by date range. I know that's something that we're looking to get out there, because we actually have a lot of districts, for instance, in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona, California, that are actually looking for that kind of data by date range. I know that right now we have the ability for date ranges to be run by admin. So if you're needing to actually at the administrative level check it out by date range, you're able to do that, but not right now within course analytics. Of course, though, with content that you deliver being published by certain date ranges, you can determine where that student, if the student is accessing things within that particular week, you could track it that way.
Yeah, it sounds like you can kind of triangulate it a little bit there.
Yeah,
and more to come.
But like I said, that is something that we're trying to make sure that there's more date ranges available. Now, this can also be exported out. So if you're needing to do this at a different kind of level, there's ways for our team to walk you through those types as well.
Great. Cool. Any other questions from the group? I think we may have used all of our 15 minutes there, but anything on our minds?
I was monitoring the chat and I don't see any questions regarding the Schoology, but we definitely want to make sure that if there are districts trying to evaluate Schoology, or if you're planning to implement the Schoology, reach out to the group, because in our first year, we make some mistakes that they could have been avoided. So reach out to the districts who are using the Schoology, because you can learn 1 or 2 things from them. Especially these new tools that are coming out, they're going to really enhance your experience with PowerSchool.
Yeah, great point there, Eric. We have some folks even on this call who've used Schoology for a long time and know kind of the ins and outs. And last year, a lot of people had to really rush to get it going. So it's good to kind of leverage your community here. So thank you for your time, everyone. If you have any questions, we'll stick around for a couple more minutes. You can send them to the group or individually to us, and hopefully you saw something that you liked today.
Great, thank you very much, everybody from PowerSchool. Okay, so we're running out of time, but still we want to cover all the items on our agenda. Can you guys see my screen now? Oh, that's a yes, right?
Yes.
Yes,
right.
we see it, Eric.
Perfect. Okay, so we did pretty much everything, and we did cover some of the customizations. And one of the customizations that I'm starting to use, it's one of the search buttons, the new interface. Let me bring it up here. Of course, it kicked me out. All right. All right, so you know that when you're doing all your filters and you're moving and going around, and then you're searching for a staff, you go over here and then you click on staff, and then you enter the name of the staff, and then you're going to start searching for a student, and then you get no results, right? Well, the reason in some cases is because that particular search didn't change right here. So now that particular customization allows you to change the color. So at least it's giving you something to go by, and they're completely customizable what colors you want to choose. But it is very neat because it allows you to at least remember that you're searching a particular group of people. So that was the first customization that we wanted to present. Back to the presentation. Another customization that we were doing is the COVID. And we went over that earlier today. There's some issues, like I said, not because of the plugin, but rather because of the amount of information that it gives you and the amount of information that is no longer required. So when you install that customization, you can go to the contact tracing, like we did before, and you can search information here about a student. And then when you search for that student, it will give you the contact information from the student. At the bottom, it will give you the teachers. You can make your current selection for the students or your current selection for the staff members. And then it will give you, you can use your export files that way. Nonetheless, sometimes you just need a list of the students or a list of staff members that will allow you to create just a quick, easy mailing list. So there's the customization called Build a Staff Email List, and it's an old version. And I wrote down some information, and I've already shared this presentation, and the links are in there. But the one thing that I have to say is that when let me go back to PowerSchool, it's just a little bit slow. That particular customization for the staff and create a list of the staff members is for those cases where, yes, you want to email the student teacher, but there's also other staff members that came in contact with that person, maybe a counselor, maybe the cafeteria persons. You want to notify them. As long as they're in PowerSchool, you can create a list. And the way to do that is from the search, you click on staff, you click on teachers, you're going to select the first teacher. Then it's going to give you, let me see if I can get this list of people, of teachers, and this is where you can go to the functions. This is the workaround, because technically you want to be able to, and maybe there will be an update on this customization, that when you select your staff, the link will appear here, but it has not been updated for the new interface. So the workaround that was, again, select all the staff, click on the first teacher, click on the list, and that will take you to this page where you can click on functions. From here, there is this link, building email list, and it works identical to the teacher, student, parent in the PowerTeacher Pro, where you can start selecting the teachers. You can also do filters. And then at the end, there's going to be the build list. In here, you can copy and paste it and put it into your email application. So that was one of the customizations that we came across that is very, very useful when we're doing COVID and we need to notify more than the students, teachers, or the students. We also need to account for those people who are in close contact with the student that are not in the classroom. The last plugin, it was the link email to all current teachers of a student. So because we have a lot of substitutes, and we put them as a co-teachers, and there's a lot of different things. There, the customization, it's really cool because now what you can do when you select a student, okay, let's actually select somebody from the high school. Under quick lookup, all the way at the bottom now, there is this link, email all current teachers. When you click on there, you have to set it up to do something in your email, and it will automatically take you into your Gmail or copy and paste it into your email application. And now you have all of the teachers' emails. And not only for COVID, but it's a way great to say, okay, Susan is not going to be here, or something is happening, the student is going to be taken out of the class early. It's a great way to have that mailing list from the students' teacher schedules. And I think that was the last customization that we have. Let me get back to the presentation. Yeah. And I guess we only have about 4 more minutes to talk about Power Teacher Pro. I don't know what are the questions. A district wanted to know how do we deploy it. I think it's not a 4-minute question, but it will be rather, either you can give me a call or you can send me an email and we can discuss that, because we were using Power Teacher, then we move into Unified Classroom, and now we're back to Power Teacher Pro. That's just because of the financial and changes in our district. But don't hesitate to reach out to any other districts, and they might be able to guide you and provide you with information about how to deploy properly Power Teacher Pro.
Eric, I'm sorry, is the customization on the presentation that you're going to share with us? Because I missed what you were saying.
Yes, the presentation I have shared multiple times, and then I'm going to share it at the end, and we're going to put it in our PSUGCAL.org website. And we're also going to post Stephanie's presentation there. Once I get it, we're going to put it in there as well. Okay. Let me see. What else do we have to talk about? Our next meeting, I guess, because of time constraints, first of all, I would like to thank everybody who participated, all of you who answered all of my multiple emails. It really takes a village to set up one of these these meetings, just because there's a lot of people, a lot of movement, and not enough time. So I really appreciate PowerSchool. Vivian, you've been tremendously helpful. Stephanie, I don't know if you're still in the meeting. I really appreciate all your help and your promptness to send me the replies and answers to my questions. Eric, of course, thank you very much for the Schoology part, and Adam as well. Trish or Roger, do you have anything else to add?
No, not really. I did kind of add a couple things into the chat for people who were asking about some of the customizations. If the only one I could additional one is if anybody is fairly new with PowerSchool, you definitely also want to get the multi-select customization if you're new. That one has been an amazing help, especially with California state reporting. And thanks, Eric, for getting us all back together again. This has been great.
Yeah, we actually had 118 participants and 9 on the YouTube. So it's a tremendous turnout, and really appreciate, like I said, everybody for participating. Hopefully this was useful for a lot of you. And if Trish, like she was saying, this is the multi-select customization. When you click in there, you're able to copy and paste the student numbers. You can also do a student number. You can also do the DCID or names, last names, or even student email addresses. So it's a great customization. I don't know how can we live without it. I remember one day we went to Las Vegas. The first thing within probably 2 hours when I arrived there at PSUG Las Vegas, they gave me this customization. I said, this is it. This was worth the price to come to that conference. It was one of the best customizations.
Yes, I use it multiple times a day.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our meeting.
Do we have a date for our next one, or have we talked now?
I think that will be one of those things that I'm going to send another survey and then get more feedback, because I want to make sure that Northern California is able to access our mailing list. Now that we merge, we want to make sure that we have plenty of time and allow everybody in the state of California to attend these meetings. So be on the lookout for those emails. And if you have any questions, my email address has been posted. I'm going to put it on the presentation. Don't hesitate to reach out.
And also, if you're fairly new and haven't heard, I mean, PowerSchool puts on the monthly state reporting calls. So please join in on that. It doesn't seem like very many people are joining those, but we really need everybody's feedback so we can help and get, especially right now with the student info file issues and that type of stuff. So yeah, join the monthly state reporting calls with PowerSchool also.
And the Q&A for CalPAS, those are very, very.
So there is a known issue with the SINF file in PowerSchool?
Yes, right now, because CalPADS announced a week or 2 weeks ago that there's they have added an additional 5 fields to the end of the SINF file. And I know Aries and PowerSchool both don't have it ready yet. The last I heard, Stephanie said the end of October is when the file will be ready. I did get one file after spending 2 weeks trying to manipulate files, and I was able to take my file from PowerSchool, drop it into text edit, and do a find for a line break, add in 5 characters and another line break, copy that and paste it into a text file. The first 2 times it worked, and then the third time it didn't work, so I'm not sure what I did, but yes, there is a new update. So if you try and send an SINF file right now, it will instantly fail. Fun times.
Yeah.
That's good, because I reached out to PowerSchool last week about that, and they escalated the case because the tech didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, it was very quiet. It seemed like CalPADS released it and nobody knew about it. I'm also finding that CalPADS is actually giving guidance on those Q&A calls that they do. And apparently it was told during the Q&A that this was coming up. And no flash came out until just a day or 2 ago when we got an 8-page flash, and it talked about it. So it came in after the fact.
The reason of that file change had to do with the EBT card, because last year when the pandemic and the government was giving additional EBT cards to those who qualified, they did not receive it because their email address, their mailing address was different from their home address. And that was a big issue. That's why CalPADS had to implement the mailing address requirement on that file. So if you, like in our districts, we used to use the mailing address for the secondary parent on a divorce, separated, or multiple household child. That's something that you need to clean up. But that was the reason why it triggered that new file format, that they needed to identify the mailing address so they can get that information in CalPADS and send that EBT cards.
Can you turn it up really loud for a second?
Trish, if you download the template from CalPADS, the SINF template, and put your extract in that template, and then concatenate the formula, put a concatenate formula in AX cell, it will put the carets in there for you.
I have tried that template. I spent a week trying to get that template to work, and I've never been able to get it to upload and not fail.
Would you like me to send you the formula to put in the AX cell that will actually recreate your extract, and then you can just post it into the notepad, the text notepad, and then upload that? It works. I've done it
numerous times already.
Yeah, if you could share it with the group, that would be amazing, because I've spent a week and a half working with that and gave up and tried using text edit, and I got it to work a couple times, and then a couple times it hasn't worked. So
Well,
yeah,
if you want to provide your email, I'll send it out. I
that'd be
actually have
great.
to send it out in an email because it's a long formula that you have to put into the AX2 cell, and then just copy it down. I'll send the instructions if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. And C Biggs, your question on the chat was about the ELs. As of, I believe it was last year or the year before, ELs do not pull into the Cella file any longer, because that data goes strictly from TOMS into CalPads.
PowerSchool community responded when the thread was going around about the SINF file, and they said that the fix is due October 12th.
Okay, so they at least got it pushed a week ahead.
Yeah,
I was told like the 27th.
Yeah, Stephanie said that it was too early to do that one on that push, but if they can do it, that will be great. I mean, that is something that we need, because otherwise we're going to be spending hundreds of hours trying to upload that information, things that we don't have time. So Vivian, if you don't mind, see what they can do to push it to the October 12th release. It's very, very critical for us.
I have made a note of that. I will definitely push for that. Thank you.
And Stephanie knows. Okay, it's 12:06. I really want to respect everybody's time. It is a pleasure to be with you guys again. Hopefully one of our next meetings will be in person for those who can make it. Otherwise, we will continue to do this format with Zoom and YouTube. In the meantime, just shoot over our homepage for PowerSchool user group at PSUGCAL.org, and make sure that you sign up for those newsletters so you are well informed from our next meetings. And please reply to those questionnaires, because we need your input to do this. One district or two districts put in all the information might not benefit the entire state. So your participation is also greatly appreciated when you answer those questionnaires. All right. Well, I'm going to have to close this meeting. Everybody have a safe weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.